Chapter 446, All-Star Battle, Unparalleled Pride. Chapter 446, All-Star Battle, Unparalleled Pride. The three great paragons of the immortal and Buddhist sects were ganging up on a single person. If word of this spread to the cultivation world, it would definitely cause an uproar. Suzimo took a deep breath of air, and his chest puffed massively. Letting out a long roar, his bloodline expanded, and he slashed thrice in succession, almost at the same time. Each slash carried forth a shuddering power shockwave. Bang! 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 The first slash struck the startling sword, forcing Hang Chuyu back. The second slash struck the purple sword. The purple chi surrounding Ao Yuxiao was linked to it, and as such, it shook violently and most of it dissipated. The final slash struck the diamond staff, causing Monk Ju Chun to grunt dully. His expression changed starkly as he staggered in retreat repeatedly. Suzimo was fearless against the combined attacks of the three great paragons. Instead, the power he emitted was even more terrifying and his aura was fiercer, as though it could suppress everything. The three of them were not the only ones shocked. Even all the paragons watching were stunned. How did Divine Phoenix Island create someone like that? If he was already in possession of such tremendous strength at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment, who could stop him if they were all at the same level of 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment? There was no wonder why Divine Phoenix Island dared to allow this man into the ancient battlefield. A successor as such was already showing signs of being unstoppable. If nothing went wrong, there was an extremely high chance that he would definitely receive the title of an emperor in the future. Before many paragons could finish that thought, Suzimo's next statement caused a huge stir in everyone's hearts. After forcing the three great paragons back with 3 consecutive slashes, his aura was torrential and he swept his gaze across the paragons like lightning. Everyone who was here at the Human Emperor's Palace were all the elites of the super sects and had great pride and ego. Even though Suzimo was extremely strong and had ferocious methods, none of them would want to admit defeat against him before they fought with him. All the paragons were raring to give it a shot. Well. Nodding his head, Suzimo's bloodline surged. His bones and tendons rang together as he declared loudly, "Let's save the trouble. All of you can come at me together. I'll deal with all of you at the same time. Deal with all of you at the same time. Deal with all of you at the same time." Suzimo's voice was like a gigantic bell that rang through the universe, reverberating in everyone's minds for the longest time. The moment he said that, everyone present was shocked. What did that imply? It meant that he wanted to face all the paragons of the immortal and Buddhist sects single-handedly. His pride and guts were extremely rare across history and were comparable to that of an emperor's. Overlord Palace's Peng Yu said slowly, "He's not called Mad Blade for nothing. He's truly mad." Even Peng Yu could not help but acknowledge his inferiority at that moment. No matter the outcome of this battle, he wouldn't have dared to make that bold statement personally. He was not the only one. All of the paragons, Hang Chuyu and Ao Yuxiao included, would not dare make a claim as such. It was complete arrogance that looked down on the immortal and Buddhist sects. Steel is easily snapped if it's too rigid. Does this guy really think of himself as an emperor? Cloud Rain Sect's Shangguan Yu sneered, "Don't forget that you're just a Foundation Establishment cultivator. I don't believe that Mad Blade will be able to suppress all the paragons of the immortal and Buddhist sects single-handedly." That's right. The Fiend Heir of Illusion Fiend Cult nodded in agreement. Hang Chuyu and the others definitely have trump cards up their sleeves still. If they fight till the end and piss off all the paragons, causing them to fight with all their might, that man is bound to die. On the battlefield, Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han was the first to step forward as she declared coldly with a frosty expression, "Since you looked down on Snowdrift Valley's secret skill earlier on, I'll come and take you on. If that's the case, I, Chen Yitzi of Chaos Essence Sect, wants to have a taste of Divine Phoenix Island's ultimate moves as well." Another paragon stood forth together with Hang Chuyu and the others. Right after, another paragon leaped forward onto the battlefield, saying in a low voice, "I'm from Zephyr Thunder Palace." "Stop talking." Zemo raised his hand and interrupted impatiently before continuing indifferently. If you want to fight, fight. I'm not interested in knowing more. You. Zephyr Thunder Palace's successor's face was black after being cut as he grit his teeth angrily. In the blink of an eye, Hangqiu's group of three, Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han, Chaos Essence Sect's Chen Yitzi, Zephyr Thunder Palace's successor, Clear Wind Temple's successor, Formless Monastery's successor, and Wisdom Monastery's successor arrived on the battlefield. The 9 paragons looked unfriendly as they moved slowly, surrounding Zemo in the middle. Demonish G was instantly panicked when she saw that. Looking at the fiend heirs around her, she asked with a frown, "Are you guys just going to stand by and watch? If Madblade loses, the successors of the Immortal and Buddhist sects are going to turn their attention to us, and we of the Fiend sects are still going to be disadvantaged." He asked for this. Cloud Rain sect's Shangguan Yu laughed. Furthermore, who knows? Perhaps this fellow Taoist of Divine Phoenix Island might be able to take down all 9 paragons single-handedly, gaining fame after this single battle. Pang Yu and the others were calm. Clearly, they had no intention of stepping in. There was naturally no way they would make a move before determining if the situation was in their favor. Zenith Sect's Bai had a sinister expression. Suddenly, he said in an ambiguous manner, "If I step in, there's no guarantee whose side I'll be on." Because the battle had already started, Demonish G did not pay attention to the deeper meaning behind Bai's words. "Since there's so much hype, count me in." Chuckling lightly with a faked composure, Demonish G chose to join the battlefield. Given her strength, the most she could do was hold off a single paragon to take some of the pressure off Zemo's shoulders. However, he still had to face 8 paragons all by himself. Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han furrowed her brows and broke out of the battle to hold off Demonish G. The two beauties brought their battle to a corner, fighting in a graceful and stunning manner. Although this was the first time they joined forces, the 8 paragons had a chemistry in their coordination. Sword sects Hangqiu and Diamond Monastery's monk Zhu Chan joined hands to fight Zemo in melee combat. The other 6 paragons kept their distance from Zemo, making use of their spirit weapons and arts to summon a flurry of attacks as spirit light and sword chi streaked through and filled the skies. Bang! Bang! Zemo slashed twice in succession, colliding heavily against the startling sword and the diamond staff. Hangqiu and monk Zhu Chen shuddered, retreating half a step back. However, Zemo made use of that rebound power to stomp on the ground before leaping backwards. His body was almost stuck to the ground as he evaded many spirit weapons and arts by a shave. Ao Yuxia was calm when he saw Zemo approaching him. Riding on his flying sword, he retreated swiftly to keep his distance. Chaos Essence Sect's Chun Yizi's eyes flickered brightly. That person is at the realm of tsunami blood, and his physique and melee combat strength is terrifying. Everyone, there's no need to fight him head-on. As long as we keep our distance, we can definitely wear him out. The paragons present were long prepared, and they supported one another. Coupled with the fact that there were 8 of them, there was naturally no way they would allow Zemo to close in. The moment Zemo charged towards one of them, the other 7 would attack to block his path forward. Hangqiu and monk Zhu Chan were like cockroaches, chasing forward to embroil Zemo in battle. The spirit chi on the battlefield was already boiling long ago. The 8 paragons combined forces and their figures intertwined and shifted repeatedly, restricting Zemo to his position. Even so, the waves of attacks that were produced by the 8 of them were still unable to break through Zemo's defense. He was blocking everything with his saber. As time passed by, the 8 paragons felt increasingly alarmed, and their killing intents intensified. All 8 of them professed internally that if they were in Zemo's position, they would not last more than 10 breaths against such attacks. Even if they could defend all the attacks, it would take too much of a toll on them. Even golden cores might not be able to endure through it. However, 15 minutes had already passed by now. Not only was the successor of Divine Phoenix Island feeling no fatigue, the battle intent in his eyes was intensifying and his gaze shone brighter. His entire aura was on a continuous rise. If this continued on, the outcome would be unpredictable. Chapter 447. Raging Tides, Faint Killing Intent. Chapter 447. Raging Tides, Faint Killing Intent. It was a shocking battle. On the battlefield, spirit light filled the skies and sword chi intertwined with the saber beam as spirit energy surged. With each collision, a blinding light would shoot forth and fill the 9 heavens with a deafening boom. There were still some cultivators who were more gutsy and remained to watch the battle beneath the human emperor's palace from afar. Because they were too far away, all of them could not make out the appearances of the paragons. However, they could still make out a mighty figure streaking through the battlefield against all odds. Although he was surrounded by 8 paragons, he was not nervous in the slightest bit. It did not matter how famous or bedazzling sword sects Hang Qiuyu and purple firmament sects Ao Yuxiao were prior to this. At this moment, in the face of Divine Phoenix Island's successor, they seemed so lackluster. That was a true paragon. Bang, bang, bang. Clashing sounds echoed repeatedly from the battlefield. Despite the fact that he was fighting 1 against 8, Su Zimo was getting fiercer, and he was even showing signs of turning the tides as he shrouded all 8 paragons. With his immortality and demonic cultivation, coupled with the fact that he had cultivated to the legendary Tsunami Blood Realm, he had a strong physique and terrifying stamina. He was confident that he could overwhelm any strong foes at the Realm of Foundation establishment. He used his full strength with every strength, swinging widely like a supreme emperor that could sweep through the 9 heavens with an invincible might, looking down on everything. Even the sealers that were watching from outside the human emperor's palace were stunned, let alone the cultivators who were watching from afar. He was way too strong. Apart from Su Zimo's terrifying strength, his stamina was limitless like a bottomless pit. It was extremely frightening. To think that Divine Phoenix Island would have produced such an amazing monster with unparalleled potential. The sealers were expressionless as they exchanged glances. All of them could make out fleeting killing intents in the other's eyes. If this person was already producing such an invincible aura at such a young age, who could stop him in the future? They had to murder this talent. At that moment, all the sealers had the same thought. However, they were sealers after all, and the moment they attacked would be the moment they died. Unless they had no other choice, they wouldn't attack recklessly. On the battlefield, the 8 paragons were no longer as nimble as before. Monk Ju Chun had minor injuries to begin with. After clashing head-on with Su Zimo, he triggered his internal injuries once more and he looked terrible. There was even a faint blood stench when he panted. His internal organs were already shaken. Su Zimo was equally lively with a raring fighting intent. If the battle carried on as such, Monk Ju Chin's organs would be ruptured and he would die before Su Zimo was even exhausted. The other paragons were starting to look pale and panted as well. Suddenly, Sword Sect's Hang Qiuyu shouted, "Fellow Taoists of the Fiend Sects, only one of us can obtain the human emperor's palace's inheritance. Look at how strong this guy is. If you guys don't start attacking, by the time we fall, all of you from the Fiend Sects are going to be suppressed too." The cultivators who were watching from afar were stunned and shocked when they heard that. If the Fiend heirs were to take part in the fight, it would mean that the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects would be ganging up on a cultivator of the same cultivation realm. Even ancient emperors would not have been treated the same way. The few Fiend heirs had conflicting expressions. However, in their opinions, Hang Qiuyu's words made sense as well. Once the paragons of the Immortal and Buddhist sects fall, the few of them won't be a match for that person. There was a high chance that he would be the one to obtain the human emperor's palace's inheritance. Overlord Palace's Peng Yu loved to fight to begin with. Upon encountering someone as strong as Su Zimo, he was naturally raring to fight and wanted to join the battlefield. At that thought, the few Fiend heirs were tempted, but they were still hesitant. Among them, there was only a single person who made his decision. It was Bai Yu, the Fiend heir of Zenith sect. He had a feeling that the successor of Divine Phoenix Island definitely had something to do with the green-robed cultivator. Suddenly, a roar sounded from the battlefield. Raging tides. His words were accompanied by a deafening boom, as if a massive tide had crashed onto the shore in a terrifying manner. In the center of the battlefield, Su Zimo wielded his saber and spun a circle in midair. Massive tides seemed to form everywhere his saber sliced, surging towards the 8 paragons in a ferocious manner. Saber force. Against the combined attacks of 8 paragons from the immortal and Buddhist sects, the unprecedented pressure had finally allowed Su Zimo to comprehend the raging tide stance of the Sea Calming Manual. Countercurrent was the toughest saber technique to target a single cultivator with. However, Raging Tides was suited for dealing with opponents in all directions. With that slash, Raging Tides were formed, roaring and threatening to drown everything, destroying the 8 desolates. At this point of the battle, Su Zimo burst forth with a massive counterattack and the Raging Tides rumbled, engulfing the 8 paragons into the series of saber forces. Instantly, all 8 paragons were on the brink of danger. That's enough. Suddenly, Hang Qiuyu's cold voice that was filled with killing intent could be heard from the flurry of saber forces. Break it! Hollering, he slapped his storage bag and a silver circlet flew out, hovering in midair before bursting with a blinding radiance. 1, 2, 6 spirit patterns. It was a Incarnate spirit weapon. The fact that a Incarnate spirit weapon was given to a Foundation establishment cultivator was evident of how much Hang Qiuyu was valued in Sword Sect. This was his final trump card. Initially, he had intended to keep it until the final fight for the Human Emperor's palace's inheritance to suppress everyone. But given the current circumstances, he had no choice but to use it in advance. Purple Firmament Slash. Against Raging Tides, Ao Yuxiao could not hide any longer as well as he conjured a hand seal, releasing a secret skill of Purple Firmament Sect. Shrouded by purple chi, an extremely sharp purple sword was condensed in midair before slicing the incoming Raging Tides fiercely. Indestructible Diamond. Monk Ju Chen's hands were shifting continuously as he conjured a hand seal of the Buddhist sects while chanting obscure scriptures. Instantly, his body seemed as though it was covered by a layer of saintly glow that illuminated brightly. Against the Raging Tides, Monk Ju Chun was calm like a Vajra of the Buddhist sections. His eyes were closed, and he was unmoved even as the wave washed over him. The 3 of them were not the only ones. The other 5 paragons released their final trump cards one after another as well. Some of them brought out perfect-grade defensive spirit weapons, some of them crushed protection talismans with resplendent patterns, and others released ultimate secret skills of their sects. They were all proving their capabilities. Almost at the same time, Zenith Sect's Baiyu's figure flashed as he wielded a spirit saber and charged towards Su Zimo's back with a torrential killing intent. Baiyu, you! Demoness Ji exclaimed when she saw that, wanting to strike and force back Baiyu. However, Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han's flying sword was moving swifter and swifter, restricting Demoness Ji to the spot such that she was unable to break free. The situation on the battlefield was shifting rapidly, and Su Zimo's Raging Tides expanded widely, looking as though it was about to defeat the 8 paragons soon. Yet, all 8 of them released their trump cards unexpectedly and withstood Raging Tides head-on. Furthermore, Hang Qiuyu and Ao Yuxiao managed to counterattack, and a Incarnate spirit weapon was even brought out. Between the saber and sword flashes, an imperceptible figure appeared without warning like a ghost, creeping towards Su Zimo. There was a faint killing intent that appeared. Chapter 448, Trying to Escape? Chapter 448, Trying to Escape. Zenith Sects Baiyu? When he saw Baiyu charging over from the sides, Su Zimo already realized that his identity was being suspected. At that thought, Su Zimo's killing intent rose massively as well. All of a sudden, an unprecedented sense of danger surged into his heart. Su Zimo's hairs stood on end, and his scalp prickled. The feeling of danger did not come from Hang Qiuyu, Ao Yuxiao, any of the 8 paragons or Zenith Sects Baiyu who was charging towards him from behind. It was someone else. It was someone that Su Zimo could not see with his eyes. However, His keen spirit perception gained from cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness informed him that an extremely scary cultivator was hidden in a corner, waiting to deal him a fatal blow. The attacker's angle could be considered as perfect as it was in Su Zimo's blind spot. The timing of the attack was also perfect without any flaws at all. At that moment, Su Zimo had just released Raging Tides and was in the weakest state as he was recovering from the momentum of his action. Furthermore, the 8 Paragons had just released their trump cards and Hang Qiuyu and Ao Yuxiao were counterattacking. A Incarnate spirit weapon was even brought out. Coupled with the fact that Bai Yu was arriving from the back, Su Zimo was already cornered by enemies on all fronts. Given those circumstances, the unknown cultivator's attack was a complete deadlock for Su Zimo, such that it would be difficult even for deities to save him. Suddenly, a vague, blurry figure flashed through Su Zimo's mind. It wasn't because his memory was bad. Instead, nobody had seen that person's appearance before. It was the thousand-faced assassin of Hidden Death Sect. Prior to this, that killer from the Fiend sects had not made his appearance. Now that he attacked, he was aiming for Su Zimo's life. It's him. A few sealers close to the human emperor's palace narrowed their gazes and exclaimed. One of the sealers shook his head. It's over. That lad's a dead man now. Everyone nodded in agreement. To them, there was no way Su Zimo would be able to reverse this deadly situation given his abilities. What a pity. Even a paragon as such has to die at the human emperor's palace. There's nothing to be pitied about. Throughout history, there have been countless paragons who suffered early deaths. He's merely one of them. Suddenly, the tides changed on the battlefield. The 8 paragons released their skills respectively and 6 of them defended against Raging Tides while Hang Qiuyu and Ao Yuxiao counterattacked. A purple beam tore through the layers of tides and slashed towards Su Zimo. With a calm expression, Su Zimo spun his saber and slashed forward, intending to make use of his power of bloodline to fight Purple Firmament Sect's secret skill head-on. Buzz! Buzz! Suddenly, a silver circlet tore through the air and buzzed while quivering. 6 blinding spirit lights shone like a blazing sun, emitting a terrifying aura. Clang! The silver circlet collided against the saber. Su Zimo shuddered. With a creak, cracks started appearing on the blade and it exploded. Destroyed. A supreme-grade spirit weapon was destroyed just like that. That was how terrifying Incarnate spirit weapons were. After circling in midair, the silver circlet reversed towards Su Zimo again. At the same time, Ao Yuxiao's purple firmament descended. Arriving at the back, Bai Yu's zenith saber slashed out at a sinister angle with a nauseating blood stench. The sounds of ghosts howling could be heard vaguely. Saber Force. After losing to Su Zimo the previous time round, Bai Yu managed a breakthrough as well and comprehended a Saber Force of the Zenith Saber. 3 ultimate killing moves descended at the same time. At the exact moment, an imperceptible figure appeared, wielding a long, slender sword that was as thin as cicada wings. The person's appearance was ordinary and his eyes were listless like a dead fish. The killing intent that he possessed was completely innate, but his sword was aimed at the back of Su Zimo's head and was almost instantaneous. The destruction of the spirit saber made the situation even worse. Su Zimo was barehanded and had nowhere to retreat now. Upon seeing that, Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han and Demoness Ji stopped in their tracks instinctively. Ah! Blood drained from Demoness Ji's face as she exclaimed. A deafening sound rang in her mind and it went blank, as if someone had gripped her heart and stopped it from beating. All of a sudden, battle! A holler that sounded like thunder booming tore through metal and stone while quaking one's mind. In reality, that was Su Zimo's thunderclap kill. However, in order to hide his identity, he changed the word from kill to battle without diminishing its strength. Even the cultivators who were watching from afar were so shocked that they shuddered in fear. They could not imagine how the 4 paragons closest to Su Zimo in the center of the battlefield were going to endure that terrifying blow. The 4 of them winced in pain at the same time. Be it the purple firmament Hang Qiuyu's Incarnate spirit weapon, Bai Yu's zenith saber, or the thousand-faced assassin's slender sword. Everything paused for a brief moment. That momentary pause was Su Zimo's chance. Crackle. Leaping upwards, his tendons and bones sounded at the same time, and his entire body crumpled into a ball. The burly man that was initially 2 meters tall turned into a meatball the size of an infant right in front of everyone. While his methods may seem ordinary if they were performed by an ancient mighty figure or patriarch, the fact that a Foundation establishment cultivator was doing it was unbelievable. His move, coupled with the burst of thunderclap kill, caused the attacks of the 4 paragons to miss. Not only that, Hang Chuyu's Incarnate spirit weapon was even repelled towards Bai Yu. Ao Yuxiao's purple firmament landed in front of the thousand-faced assassin. Clang! Bai Yu shuddered and blood oozed from the corner of his lips. The power of a Incarnate spirit weapon was not something that everyone could withstand. The thousand-faced assassin managed to retract his sword in time and made a decisive move to retreat swiftly after blocking the purple firmament slash by making use of its momentum. After missing his attack, he fled 1,000 miles away. Swoosh! A shuddering aura suddenly burst forth from within Su Zimo's body. It was as though a seal was undone, releasing a frightening fiend celestial. Roar! Groar! Screech! A series of strange sounds echoed from within Su Zimo's body. There was a dragon's roar, a tiger's howl, a horse's neigh, a phoenix's cry. Scarlet demonic chi burst forth and covered the skies. The infant-sized meatball disappeared, and in its place was a mighty figure that could faintly be seen as it was shrouded in thick, demonic chi. A pair of ink-black eyes shone forth with a frightening shimmer. It was cold, sinister, and filled with endless killing intent. Pissed! The paragons, sealers, and cultivators watching from afar were shocked and gasped. Hang Qiuyu and the other 3 shuddered. In that instant, they had an illusion that the human before them who was surrounded by demonic chi seemed like he was about to devour them alive. You guys really think that you can kill me with your skills? In that endless scarlet demonic chi, Su Zimo's voice sounded, sending chills down everyone's spine as though he came from the primordial era where thousands of races stood mightily amidst torrential blood chi. Invoking his blood chi, Su Zimo took on his demon form, causing his strength and speed to explode. You're still trying to escape? Suddenly, Su Zimo's voice sounded in the thousand-faced assassin's ears. It was sinister and right beside him. Chapter 449 Kill. Chapter 449 Kill. As if a figure was shifting in front of him, the thousand-faced assassin paused in his tracks hurriedly. Unknowingly, Su Zimo had already arrived before him with an imposing aura, blocking his escape path. It was too fast. Even with the thousand-faced assassin's calm personality, at that moment, he felt a series of chills. His expression changed slightly, and his dead fish eyes flickered with a hint of panic. A mighty and tall figure stood up slowly from the ground, surrounded by rumbling demonic chi. The illusion of a malefic ancient demon was formed, baring its teeth and claws in a menacing, lifelike manner. It was as though countless stars were revolving around a moon, shrouding the gigantic ancient demon in the center. Su Zimo's eyes were deep and pitch-black as he looked down at the thousand-faced assassin. It was a cold, taunting gaze. It was the same way an emperor was looking at an ant that was struggling to escape. Pissed. Instantly, the thousand-faced assassin's heart skipped a beat, and he felt chills run down his spine. The next moment, Su Zimo suddenly reached out with his gigantic palm that covered the skies, grabbing at the thousand-faced assassin's head with a torrential aura. The thousand-faced assassin was extremely swift to react, and he raised his sword while crushing a protection talisman at the same time. The blade of his sword quivered like a snake, emitting a sinister and chilling aura. To him, no matter what, Su Zimo was fighting barehanded after all. There was no way a person's body could defend against the sharpness of a spirit weapon. All of a sudden, the thousand-faced assassin's pupils constricted. From the massive palm that was shrouded over his head, dagger-like fingernails suddenly shot out from its fingers, shimmering coldly like swords and sabers. Those fingernails looked like the claws of an ancient demon that were indestructible. In the blink of an eye, 5 fingernails struck the thousand-faced assassin's thin sword. Buzz! As though it was coiled by a venomous viper, the thousand-faced assassin's sword struggled repeatedly, but it could not break free and could only buzz and tremble. With a snap, the sword shattered. There was a commotion. A supreme-grade spirit weapon was crushed by Su Zimo's bare hands, turning into dim shards that scattered onto the ground near to the thousand-faced assassin's feet. The next moment, the thousand-faced assassin's vision darkened, and he lost consciousness. His protection talisman was as fragile as tofu against Su Zimo's hand. The 5 fingernails pierced the barrier produced by the protection talisman instantly and landed on the thousand-faced assassin's head with a dull sound. By the time Su Zimo retracted his hand, there were 5 bloodied holes on the thousand-faced assassin's head, oozing out with a white, gooey liquid. The thousand-faced assassin's dead fish eyes no longer lit up as he collapsed while standing upright. His life snapped away. The fiend heir of Hidden Death Sect was killed right beneath the human emperor's palace. Everything went silent. A paragon had just died. It did not matter how strong or how glorious the thousand-faced assassin was prior to this. At this moment, he was no different from one of the lifeless corpses under the human emperor's palace. The heavens are often jealous of those who are talented. Since they were the objects of jealousy, they would often encounter ordeals unimaginable by the ordinary cultivator. At the end of the day, talents that fall are eventually forgotten by the masses. Not every sect among the major factions of Tianhuang mainland sent in sealers. Poison Sect, the Fiend Sect's Pure Maiden Sect, and Hidden Death Sect did not send in sealers. To Hidden Death Sect, the thousand-faced assassin would definitely be able to roam freely and undefeated across the ancient battlefield. Even if he failed in his assassinations, he could flee far away. Throughout history, there had been fiend heirs of Hidden Death Sect who have failed in the ancient battlefield, but there was never one that was killed. Right now, there was no sealer from Hidden Death Sect to take revenge for the death of the thousand-faced assassin. Su Zimo did not stop after killing the thousand-faced assassin. Taking huge strides, he arrived before Zenith Sect's Baiyu in the blink of an eye and smiled sinisterly with a cruel glint. This is bad. He wants to silence me. Baiyu was scared out of his wits as his blood flowed so quickly that his heart almost exploded. When Su Zimo shrank into a meatball earlier to avoid the 4 killing moves, Baiyu's questions were all answered. If one could shrink to that state, wouldn't it be extremely easy for this person to change his figure and alter his appearance? Despite the fact that he was faced with 8 other paragons, this person ignored them and rushed right in front of him. Baiyu was even more certain now that this was the green-robed cultivator. As the fiend heir of Zenith Sect, Baiyu was able to compose himself instantly and swung his Zenith saber, slashing towards the incoming Su Zimo while yelling, "You are..." Battle. Before Baiyu could complete his sentence, Su Zimo roared. The distance between them was too close. Baiyu shuddered violently, and he swallowed his words back from the shock. He lost his hearing and blood oozed out from his ears. The pain was so bad that his features were all contorted. Using his palm like a cleaver, Su Zimo chopped down on the wrist that Baiyu was wielding his saber with. Snap! The sound of bones cracking rang out, and his wrist was snapped. Sneering, Su Zimo closed in and reached out, grabbing Baiyu by the throat and lifting the latter up. Wringing his arm, he gripped Baiyu's throat violently and shook. Crackle! Accompanied by a crisp sound, Baiyu's skeleton was shaken out of position by Su Zimo. Even if he had immense strength, he wouldn't be able to use a single bit at this moment. Baiyu's entire body was flaying limply as Su Zimo lifted him up. Because he was choked by the throat, his entire face was bloated and purplish such that he couldn't speak at all. "How dare you? Stop! Don't!" The first statement came from a blood-robed old man who was watching from afar. He was Zenith Sect's sealer. The second statement came from the few fiend heirs. The third statement came from Demonist G. Zenith Sect sealer is already rushing over. If you kill him, the sealer will definitely attack you using his strength as a golden core. Don't be reckless. Demoness G tried persuading anxiously. Suzimo said nothing and merely shook his head. Notwithstanding the fact that Baiyu attacked him multiple times, the fact that Baiyu knew his identity meant that Suzimo could not let this guy survive. Demoness G's heart sank in dread. Junior, if you dare kill him, I'll make sure you are buried with him. Not far away, the blood-robed old man sped over while yelling. His killing intent was surging, as though a hurricane of blood was forming. Suzimo was unmoved despite hearing that as he merely looked at the old man coldly. On the other side, Overlord Palace's Pangyu shouted grimly, "Mad Blade, let him go. Otherwise, you will be going against the fiend sects and will be forcing us to attack." Ha 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 ha. When he heard that, Suzimo looked up into the skies and roared in laughter. Looking at everyone with a condescending manner, he hollered, "The fiend sects are allowed to attack me, but I'm not allowed to kill in return? Do you really think that makes sense?" The fiend heirs went silent. To begin with, you guys wanted to join forces with the Immortal and Buddhist sections. But now, you're just forcefully looking for an excuse? Suzimo sneered, "How hypocritical." Pangyu's eyes flickered. Clearly, Suzimo was spot on. If not for the fact that it was the human emperor's palace that was before them, given the pride of the fiend sects, they would definitely not join forces with the Immortal and Buddhist sections. However, that was the inheritance of the human emperor. How could anyone in the world not be tempted? The combat strength that Suzimo displayed was way too terrifying, and they had no other choice but to join forces to take him down. At that moment, Suzimo's cold voice sounded as he said everything word by word. "Since that's the case, I'll give you guys a reason to attack." Snap! Exerting force in his palm, Suzimo crushed Baiyu's throat instantly. The fiend heir of Zenith sect was dead. Chapter 450, Suppressing Everyone. Chapter 450, Suppressing Everyone. Baiyu's death caused the vicinity of the human emperor's palace to descend into a grim silence. The cultivators who were watching afar were shocked as they looked at everything in disbelief. He was way too savage. That man did not even care about the threat of a sealer. Even though he had already offended the Immortal and Buddhist sects, the successor of Divine Phoenix Island was still brazen and decisive in his kills, taking down 2 fiend heirs with utter dominance. When he said that he was going to give them a reason to attack, it meant that he did not fear the combined attacks of all the paragons from the Immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects. Emperors were the strongest existences in Tianhuang mainland and had extraordinary bearings. Every single cultivator that was present right now, including the sealers, did not have the chance to come across an emperor before. However, at this moment, the same thought flashed through everyone's minds. Back when the emperors were at Foundation Establishment Realm, this should be how they were like. It's over. Her heart sank. With Baiyu's death, there was now no way back, and Suzimo was about to face an enraged sealer. Although he was close to the end of his life, he was still a golden core after all. The many paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects looked at Suzimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Their gazes were filled with mockery and pity. There was no longer a need for them to make a move. Zenith Sect Sealer, who had just entered the battlefield, was more than enough to kill Suzimo. Suzimo's expression was unchanged as he looked at the incoming blood-robed old man. The scarlet demonic chi that was surrounding him did not diminish, and his eyes shone fiercely. "I don't care what you are." The blood-robed old man glared at Suzimo with a heavy killing intent as his aura climbed. "I'm going to kill you right now." Before he was finished with his statement, a saber appeared in the blood-robed old man's hand. Swash! Although it was only a supreme-grade spirit weapon, coupled with the strength of a golden core, a torrential saber beam filled with blood chi arrived before Suzimo instantly. Ow! The sounds of ghosts wailing could be heard. It was as though a chilling mountain of corpses and a sea of blood had appeared right in front of Suzimo. The next moment, to everyone's shock, Suzimo actually took a step forward. Gripping his right fist, He punched fiercely towards the incoming saber. He truly doesn't know his limits. There's no choice. There's no time for him to retreat anyways. He might as well meet the attack and die a slightly more dignified death. The Paragon sneered. Demoness G turned her head away, as though she could not bear to continue watching. Boom! The fist and saber collided, letting out a resounding bang. Everyone was rooted on the spot as they looked at what happened in absolute disbelief. The bloody scene that everyone imagined did not play out. Suzumo's right fist was not cut into two after meeting with the slash. After a short pause, Suzumo let out a dull grunt and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying and landed on the ground far away, standing motionlessly as the scarlet demonic chi around his dissipated gradually. At the same time, a few ghastly cracks appeared behind the blood-robed old man. It was as though the void was being ripped apart as a chilling wind gusted. The dimensional tear? The blood-robed old man's eyes dimmed. That was the fate of a sealer. Since they broke the rules of the ancient battlefield, they had to be punished. However, he had no regrets since he was able to kill Suzumo. Although Suzumo managed to defend against the sharpness of the spirit saber, the blood-robed old man believed that there was no way a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator could withstand the strength of a golden core. A powerful suction power arrived. The blood-robed old man was pulled into the dimensional tear uncontrollably and blood scars appeared on his face. He was about to be shredded by the dimension. All of a sudden, Suzumo, who was initially sprawled on the ground, moved, coughed and rose. MMM? He was not dead. The blood-robed old man was agitated and his eyes were filled with indignance. His mouth was open, as though he wanted to say something. The next moment, with a bang, he vanished entirely, turning into a mist of blood with no corpse left. A moment later, the tears in the void closed gradually. Divine Phoenix Island's Mad Blade is truly frightening. Even the full attack of a sealer couldn't kill him. I think he's not far from death anyways. I reckon that his organs should be ruptured, and he shouldn't have long to live. How did he manage to defend against that attack barehanded? I'm not sure. If Suzumo was using any defensive spirit weapon, his palm would have shone with the light of its spirit patterns. However, when both parties clashed, everyone saw that Suzumo was barehanded. The reason why he could defend against the Golden Core saber was due to his blood-bone palm. If he had received the attack with his left hand, Suzumo's left arm would be crippled after the slash. However, although the blood-bone palm could defend against the sharpness of the spirit weapon, it could not block out the power of a Golden Core completely. That sort of power was annihilating for a Foundation establishment cultivator. However, Suzumo's physique was way too strong, and his regeneration capabilities were shocking. He had a body that was even more terrifying than pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Although his organs were shaken and he spat out a mouthful of blood, Suzumo's injuries were already mostly recovered within a couple of breaths. A mere sealer was not enough to injure Sealer's Foundation. The sound of footsteps rustled as multiple figures grouped up around Suzumo once more. This time round, other than the 8 paragons of the Immortal and Buddhist sects, even the remaining 3 fiend heirs of the fiend sects had closed in. All of them glared at Suzumo coldly, whipping out their weapons with killing intents on their faces. Apart from Demoness G, all the paragons were prepared to join forces to kill Suzumo. They wanted to take his life while he was at his weakest. However, all the paragons were wrong about one thing. Suzumo was not as severely injured as they had imagined. That minor injury was almost negligible for him. Furthermore, the attack of the sealer coupled with the alliance of the paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects had thoroughly invoked Suzumo's feral instinct. There was no such thing as fairness in the cultivation world. The paragons of the major sects had formed an alliance, and many of them had sealers of their sects backing them. However, Suzumo was alone without any help or sealer to protect him. Yet, the more that was the case, the more he wanted to fight. He believed that what Daiyu imparted him was not inferior to the secret skills of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects. He believed that even if the Paragons joined forces, they wouldn't be able to take him down. He believed that even without the backing of a major sect, he could break through everything and reach the peak. Fu. Su Zimo laughed and surveyed his surroundings with a torrential battle intent. His eyes were filled with a demonic glint as he said slowly, Well. Since you guys want to join forces, I'll have to suppress all of you. Rubbish. Sword Sect's Hang Chuyu sneered, Mad Blade. There's no need for you to put on a front. I don't believe you still have the strength to fight after receiving the full attack of a sealer. Cloud Rain Sect's Shangguan Yu opened his folding fan and said sinisterly, Mad Blade, you're a demon. Even if the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects join hands, we're working together to take down a variant race and exact justice for the heavens. That's right, Ao Yuxiao said grimly. Since we're not of the same race, you definitely harbor evil intents. A beast like you is something that's ought to be killed. Chapter 451. Invincible. He's invincible. Chapter 451. Invincible. He's invincible. Hee. I'm a beast and you want to kill me? Su Zimo's blood chi gathered and exploded, causing scarlet demonic chi to surge into the air. He glared coldly at Ao Yuxiao before smirking and barking icily, I'll kill you first. Variant race? Exacting justice for the heavens? Those were nothing but excuses. Even if Su Zimo did not take on his demon form, the Paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects would have formed an alliance still and killed him. Who wouldn't be tempted with the inheritance of the human emperor right before them? There was no such thing as fairness and justice in the cultivation world. It was way too common to see people killing others to steal their treasures. This was a cruel world that abides by the laws of the jungle. Similar to Tsonglang Mountain Range, it was the survival of the fittest. The hands of every cultivator were tainted with endless blood. The higher one's cultivation realm was, the more corpses would be stacked beneath their feet. Boom! Su Zimo stomped on the ground and let out a deafening bang. In the blink of an eye, he vanished from the spot and sprinted towards Ao Yuxiao. It was too fast. A series of afterimages were formed in the void. Ao Yuxiao's expression changed starkly. Before he could react, a malefic aura that was suffocating had already reached him. A mighty figure arrived before him, shrouded with scarlet demonic chi. Those eyes were blindingly bright and shone with a demonic glint filled with killing intent. The purple chi that surrounded Ao Yuxiao was corroded by the thick demonic chi, melting swiftly like the way snow reacted to the scorching sun. Condense. Realizing that it was too late to dodge, Ao Yuxiao roared and crushed his protection talisman while conjuring a hand seal, causing the spirit chi in the air to boil. Spirit chi and his purple chi intertwined, condensing into a long sword with surging purple chi in front of Ao Yuxiao. It revealed its sharp edge and shot towards Su Zimo. Break it! Closing in, Su Zimo yelled and swung his arm. His fist was filled with green veins and his flesh flooded with blood, expanding swiftly as it descended like a gigantic seal. Boom! The gigantic seal collided against the purple sword and let out a resounding bang that was deafening. The purple sword was shattered by a single punch from Su Zimo. Ao Yuxiao shuddered and spat out a mouthful of blood, staggering backwards. Before he could catch his breath, his vision turned black and that fist-turned seal crushed down once more with endless ferocity. The second punch had arrived. Snap! The protection talisman was like paper against Su Zimo's demon form, shattering instantly against the punch. Poof! Immediately after, the punch descended and pummeled down on Ao Yuxiao's head, smashing it. The Paragon of Purple Firmament sect was dead. The sealers that were watching from the outer perimeter of the human emperor's palace were stunned, let alone the cultivators watching from afar. That was an 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator. He could not last 3 moves against the successor of Divine Phoenix Island, and was killed in 2 punches. Furthermore, prior to that, that person was just dealt a full blow by a sealer and was severely injured. How did he manage to produce such terrifying strength still? Snap! A thunderbolt descended onto Su Zimo's head. The eyes of Zephyr Thunder Palace's successor lit up as he roared in laughter. Haha, you won't last long now that you're struck by Zephyr Thunder Palace's secret skill. Normally speaking, the power of thunder was the most effective in countering demons and evil beings. It was just a pity that Su Zimo's bloodline possessed the power of thunder as well. When Zephyr Thunder Palace's secret skill surged into Su Zimo's body, it was devoured by his bloodline, and his blood chi even rose because of that. Swash! Before Zephyr Thunder Palace's successor could finish laughing, Su Zimo's figure flashed, and he arrived before the former almost instantly. That person was scared out of his wits and was frightfully pale. Even if one wasn't severely injured after being struck by Zephyr Thunder Palace's secret skill, they should be paralyzed by the effect of thunder. He had never come across someone like Su Zimo who was still so vigorous after being struck by thunder. He was completely unaffected. Fellow Taoists, save me! That person shrieked and swiftly withdrew a mirror from his storage bag. Injecting spirit energy into it, it expanded instantly, and he held the mirror that was surging and crackling with lightning in front of him. Boom! Su Zimo punched the mirror. Crack! 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 Instantly, the lightning dissipated as cracks formed on the mirror. The person's arms were completely snapped, and he was sent flying by a tremendous force, crashing around the perimeter of the human emperor's palace. Blood flowed out continuously from his mouth, and he had already fainted. Just as Su Zimo was about to close in and kill that person, the other paragons arrived. Snowdrift Valley's secret skill, Chaos Essence Sect's Flying Sword, Monk Ju Chin's Diamond Staff, Heng Qiuyu's Startling Sword. Spirit arts filled the skies, sword chi streaked everywhere, and resplendent talismans that were bedazzling all flew towards Su Zimo like a flurry of raindrops, almost engulfing him. Given the circumstances, Su Zimo was still composed and his eyes shone with a deep glint. Relying on his incredible spirit perception, Su Zimo maneuvered the flurry of intense attacks swiftly with nimble movement techniques. In order to evade attacks, Su Zimo's body would contort to weird degrees from time to time. It was far beyond what the Paragons knew. In a flash, Su Zimo charged in front of Clear Wind Temple's successor and punched through the latter's chest. The successor of Clear Wind Temple was dead. The moment these Paragons were closed in by Su Zimo, they could not withstand a single blow. After taking on his demon form, the burst of speed and power from Su Zimo was way too terrifying, and he was able to sweep through any strong foes of the Foundation Establishment realm. Secret skill, Illusory Fiend. Illusion Fiend Cult's heir shouted softly and extended his palm, shifting his fingers in front of Su Zimo's eyes. They moved mysteriously in a rhythm, playing out images that seemed illusory. The secret skill of Illusion Fiend Cult could bring out the evil thoughts within a cultivator's mind, causing them to form mental fiends that they cannot escape from before eventually turning into fiends themselves. However, it was a pity that Su Zimo's gaze was like a knife and his mind was resolute. He couldn't be tempted at all. In his eyes, the methods of the Illusion Fiend Cult's heir were akin to child's play that were worthless. What nonsense secret skill is that? What an embarrassment. Buckling his knees, Su Zimo broke through all the illusions and smashed right into the Illusion Fiend Cult's heir's chest. The Illusion Fiend Cult's heir's body exploded into different parts in midair, dropping down as bloodied flesh and filling the air with a blood scent. Die! Pang Yu wielded his iron spear and burst forth with his power of bloodline. Spirit energy surged in his 8 spirit meridians, and his power was at its limits as he pierced towards Su Zimo's head. Get lost! Hollering loudly, Su Zimo suddenly spun around and retaliated with a punch. His right hand that contained the blood-bone palm collided against the black iron spear like an indestructible force. Pang Yu could sense a massive amount of power surging over through his spear that was impossible to defend against. There was a momentary pause. Instantly, blood drained from Pang Yu's face as he yelled in pain. His palm split open with blood gushing out, and his black iron spear was sent flying with Su Zimo's punch. The spear shot towards Cloud Rain Sect's Shangguan Yu, who was charging over. Shang Guanyu opened his folding fan, and his expression changed the moment it made contact with the spear. Instantly, he twisted his body, trying to avoid the incoming spear. Although the spear was merely flying due to Su Zimo's punch, the power that it possessed was still something that Shang Guanyu could not withstand. Poof! Although he managed to avoid fatal damage, his shoulder was still pierced by the spear, revealing a hole the size of a fist with the bones surrounding that area smashed into bits. Pang Yu's arms were shaking uncontrollably and fell limply to both sides. With his aura completely gone, he fled while muttering with a quivering voice, "Invincible! He's invincible!" Even the most battle-hungry and untamed fiend heir of Overlord Palace had to bow down in the face of Su Zimo. Chapter 452, Number 1 Beneath Golden Core. Chapter 452, Number 1 Beneath Golden Core. Invincible. All the cultivators watching from afar had disbelief in their eyes, and their mouths were agape for the longest time. With an invincible might, this man was single-handedly suppressing the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects. His grandeur was probably comparable to the ancient emperors. The sealers were enraged as they moved one after another. Closing in towards the human emperor's palace, their expressions were livid and their auras rose endlessly. Everyone had miscalculated the situation. None of them had expected that he could still produce such terrifying combat strength despite being struck by a full-powered attack from Zenith Sect Sealer. Although the battle against the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects sounded slow upon narration, everything happened within 10 breaths. By the time they reacted, some paragons had already died on the spot, and a good half of them were severely injured. The losses were massive, and it was too late for regrets. On the battlefield, a sword struck in a startling manner, emitting a chilling, killing intent at an extremely fast speed that was almost instantaneous. Su Zimo had just punched Pang Yu with his right hand and was unable to retract it in time. As such, he could only grab the incoming sword with his left hand. Hang Qiuyu had long noticed that there was something odd about Su Zimo's right hand. It was indestructible and could even defend against perfect spirit weapons and the full-powered attack of a sealer. Earlier on, when Su Zimo used his right hand to repel Pang Yu's massive spear, it was further confirmation of Hang Qiuyu's theory. That was the reason why he waited till this moment to strike from the left-hand side. He wanted to avoid Su Zimo's right hand. The startling sword was a perfect-grade spirit weapon. Hang Qiuyu refused to believe that the body of a Foundation establishment cultivator could defend against the edge of a perfect spirit weapon. Even the body of a pure-blooded ferocious beast could not reach such a level. However, there was no way he could have known that even pure-blooded ferocious beasts had to shy away from Su Zimo in his demon form. When he saw Su Zimo reaching out with his left hand, Hang Qiuyu's eyes flashed with a maniacal glint as he declared coldly, "Your left hand is mine." "Heh," Su Zimo sneered. He gripped the startling sword with his left palm directly, and the sword let out a sinisterly cold aura. Instantly, sword chi burst forth and 5 spirit patterns shone endlessly. Buzz, buzz. Sword chi streaked all around and flashes of blood appeared. A series of cuts appeared on Su Zimo's left hand. However, with the surge of his demonic chi, the cuts showed signs of recovery the moment they appeared. Upon seeing that, Hang Qiuyu's pupils constricted. What strong regeneration capabilities! The next moment, he discovered something even more frightening. After his startling sword was gripped by Su Zimo's hand, not only did it fail to slice his hand apart, it was even being restricted with its speed slowing down. Finally, it came to a complete halt an inch away from Su Zimo's head. Hang Qiuyu channeled his bloodline and his eyes were bloodshot as he circulated spirit energy fanatically. In fact, his dantian was already throbbing in slight pain and his arms were trembling. He was clearly at the limits of his power. As long as he could move an inch more, he could pierce Su Zimo's head. However, the startling sword refused to budge in Su Zimo's palm. Hang Qiuyu could clearly see that his startling sword had managed to cut Su Zimo's palm and blood was flowing everywhere. In fact, he could even sense the sluggish motion caused by the blade of the sword digging into Su Zimo's flesh and bone. However, all his effort was wasted because of that inch of difference. As the scarlet demonic chi surged, the sword chi around the blade was no longer as intense and sharp as before as it was slowly restricted and swallowed up. Su Zimo's blood spilled onto the startling sword. The spirit light on the sword gradually dimmed, as though it was being corroded by some sort of power. Pissed, Hang Qiuyu's eyes were filled with fright when he saw the blood on his startling sword. Nobody could understand the fear he felt at that moment. What sort of bloodline did this man possess, such that he was even able to suppress the spirit light of a perfect spirit weapon? What did everything before him imply? It meant that if a perfect spirit weapon was soaked in the man's blood, it would be destroyed before long. There were countless legends in the cultivation world. In the ancient manuals of Sword Sect, there was a statement recorded that a single drop of blood from an immortal was more than enough to crush mountains, tunnel through the voids, and kill ancient mighty figures. Naturally, Hang Qiuyu thought nothing of those legends. Even if they were immortals, could their bloodline possess such terrifying and exaggerated power? At this very moment, Hang Qiuyu realized that a person's bloodline could truly be cultivated to that level. The person before him was merely at Foundation Establishment realm, and yet, his bloodline was already this powerful. If he were to truly become a mighty figure, patriarch, or the immortals of the legends, a single drop of his blood would truly be enough to destroy a group of living beings. Right now, the startling sword was not even in Hang Qiuyu's control, let alone capable of crippling that man's palm. After it was tainted by Su Zimo's blood, Hang Qiuyu could clearly sense that the connection between him and the startling sword was getting fainter and was at the threat of severing at any moment. Amitabha. Monk Ju Chun wielded his diamond staff and shone with a golden luster. His eyes burned like a torch, and he had already arrived, exuding an inviolable might. Demon, I'm here to purify you. You're not qualified. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as his right hand that was now free turned into a fist once more and welcomed the incoming diamond staff fiercely. Bang! Shaking violently, Monk Ju Chin's palm was split open and his diamond staff was sent flying. Gripping the startling sword with his left hand, Su Zimo took a huge stride with his right leg and leaned in. Before Monk Ju Chin could react, a figure slammed over towards his chest, leaning into him. Ugh! Monk Ju Chin's eyes widened. A terrifying power surged into his body through the other party, and instantly, Monk Ju Chin's mind went blank and he was knocked flying. Bang! Landing heavily on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood and his gaze dimmed. His protection talisman and the golden barrier that he created through the Diamond Sutra were all shattered as well. A series of cuts appeared densely on his face in a frightening manner. His flesh was ruptured. He didn't die. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. After he took on his demon form and his strength increased exponentially, that lean-in should have been enough to kill 10 Monk Ju Chins. Shifting his gaze, Su Zimo caught sight of the golden kasaya worn by Monk Ju Chun, and he understood instantly. That golden kasaya must have been an extremely strong defensive spirit weapon. Otherwise, even his indestructible diamond body would have been smashed into a blood mist. Struggling to stand up, there was no aura left around Monk Ju Chin as he staggered to escape like a pathetic dog. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo roared in laughter and eyed the wretched back view of Monk Ju Chin escaping while yelling, "You want to purify me with those skills? Go back and cultivate for another 10 years first." When he heard that, Monk Ju Chin's legs buckled and he nearly fell over. As the successor of Diamond Monastery and a paragon of the Buddhist sects, he had never endured such humiliation before. Filled with indignation and utterly humiliated, Monk Ju Chin was so pinned up and upset that he spat out yet another mouthful of blood. Ugh! His chest was much relieved after he spat out that mouthful of blood, and he lamented deeply. That man is probably invincible among the Foundation Establishment realm. At that moment, Everyone realized that after this battle, as long as the successor of Divine Phoenix Island survives, he would be the number one beneath the Golden Core realm. Chapter 453, Another Dead Paragon. Chapter 453, Another Dead Paragon. The battle was not over yet. While Su Zimo sent Monk Juchen flying, he was still gripping the startling sword with his left hand and contending against Hang Qiuyu. The remaining 4 paragons attacked at the same time. Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han burst forth with her secret skill. Chaos Essence Sect's Chen Yitzi sent his flying sword forward from a distance, not daring to close in. Wisdom Monastery's successor tapped his feet on the ground and closed in, conjuring a series of afterimages with both hands as he released an ultimate secret skill, Wisdom Palm Strike. Wisdom Palm Strike possessed the power to strike an object through a medium. If it landed on one's body, although no injuries would appear on the surface, the person's organs would be ruptured. It was extremely powerful. Even Monk Ju Chun, who cultivated the Diamond Sutra, did not dare to take on Wisdom Palm Strike head-on. Flinging around like a chopper, the palm's shadows were chaotic, and it was difficult to identify the real one. Go! Formless Monastery's successor took out a copper alms bowl from his storage bag and injected spirit energy into it. It shone with a bedazzling golden light that was saintly and flawless. The copper alms bowl tilted down, and a divine light flowed down towards Su Zimo's head with chanting of scriptures by the successor. The 4 paragons attacked at the same time, but Su Zimo only had his right hand available. Chaos Essence Sect's Chen Yitzi's flying sword was the first to arrive, and Su Zimo grabbed it with his right hand without hesitating. Frost Seal. The voice was icy cold as the surrounding temperature dipped. Su Zimo started freezing up from head to toe. Even the scarlet demonic chi that was surrounding him was freezing with a layer of frost. The frost sealed both spirit energy and blood chi. At the same time, the copper alms bowl arrived above Su Zimo's head and descended slowly with a terrifying might, as though it wanted to restrain him within it. Wisdom Monastery's successor closed in, releasing a series of afterimages from his palm. Su Zimo was gripping the startling sword with his left hand, while holding off Chen Yitzi's flying sword with his right. He had no hands left to spare. Coupled with Snowdrift Valley's secret skill and the descent of Formless Monastery's copper alms bowl, the combined burst power of multiple sources restricted him to his position, unable to move at all. Bang! 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 10 consecutive palm strikes landed on Su Zimo's body. With each palm strike, Su Zimo's body would shudder once as blood oozed from the corner of his lips. All the paragons were shocked upon seeing that. Divine Phoenix Island's successor was finally injured at this point of the battle. Immediately after, Hang Qiuyu and the others discovered that even so, the person remained upright and refused to go down. Instead, the coldness in his eyes was intensifying. That isn't even enough to kill him? Wisdom Monastery's successor finally experienced the same fear that Monk Ju Chun and the others felt. That person endured more than 10 wisdom palm strikes just like that. If it was anybody else, their organs would have exploded long ago with the palm strikes. However, this man seemed like he was fine, and his gaze was fierce as ever. Among body tempering techniques, even the strongest ones of the human race, one could only swap blood through their marrow at the very most. It was difficult for them to cultivate the organs. However, the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness specialized in cultivating the organs. Su Zimo's organs were even stronger than most pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Otherwise, there was no way he would possess such frightening stamina to battle till now. After enduring more than 10 wisdom palm strikes, Su Zimo's organs were merely shaken, but his foundation was uninjured. Go down. Formless Monastery's successor hollered and shifted his hand and fingers rapidly, conjuring a spirit art that shot beams of spirit lights into the copper alms bowl. The copper alms bowl expanded rapidly and descended. Hang Qiuyu had no other choice but to relent his grip and abandon his startling sword. In the blink of an eye, the copper alms bowl that shone with a bedazzling radiance swallowed Su Zimo and locked him to the ground. Was it over? Upon seeing that, the sealers that were rushing over gradually slowed down. Umitba, Formless Monastery's successor, chanted a Buddhist proclamation and walked towards the copper alms bowl that was now as tall as a human, saying in a deep voice, "Fellow Taoists, don't worry. All it takes is the time for one incense stick to burn for anyone that enters my copper alms bowl, even pure-blooded ferocious beasts, to melt into a puddle of water and die." The Paragons heaved a sigh of relief, and their expressions relaxed significantly. Arriving before the copper alms bowl, Formless Monastery's successor lowered his head with a dignified expression while chanting continuously, causing the light around the alms bowl to shine brighter and brighter. Suddenly, a change happened. Boom! A gigantic bang sounded from within the copper alms bowl. Hang Qiuyu and the others were shocked. When they looked towards the copper alms bowl, their pupils constricted. A large dent the size of a fist appeared on the walls of the copper alms bowl. What sort of terrifying strength did he possess to be able to create a fist-sized dent on a spirit weapon of the Buddhist sects? The golden light around the copper alms bowl dimmed significantly. Bang, bang, bang. Before everyone could reach, a series of sounds exploded like raindrops as fist-sized dents appeared all around the copper alms bowl one after another. There was a momentary pause. An extremely dangerous aura was being emitted from within the copper alms bowl. "Hurry, retreat!" the old monk of Formless Monastery hollered. Boom! There was a deafening noise that shook the mountains and earth. The gigantic copper alms bowl before them exploded into shards that flew in all directions with a massive shockwave. A tall and mighty figure appeared before everyone's eyes once more. Shrouded with demonic qi, his devilish eyes shone with a cold glint, and he possessed a torrential aura. The first person to suffer was Formless Monastery's successor, who was the closest to the copper alms bowl. Sent flying by the impact, he was pierced by the shards of the alms bowl and died on the spot. Su Zimo threw the startling sword that was in his hands at an extremely fast speed, and instantly, it arrived before Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han. Condense. Ling Han was shocked and conjured a frost spirit mirror before her that was filled with chilling intent. Boom! The startling sword collided heavily against the frost spirit mirror. After a momentary pause, a series of cracks appeared on the spirit mirror. In the blink of an eye, it spread everywhere and shattered. Ling Han fell to the side, coughing fresh blood endlessly. Although it was just a simple attack, it possessed the terrifying power that Su Zimo produced after taking on his demon form, causing Ling Han to be severely injured. Bang! With a backhand slap, Su Zimo released a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness, the ground-rupturing palm, and collided intensely against the wisdom palm strikes of Wisdom Monastery's successor. The successor's eyes widened in shock. He felt an extremely terrifying ripping force that surged over, threatening to create a ravine through the ground. Shing! A blood mist spewed out. The flesh on the Wisdom Monastery's successor's arm was ripped off and his bones were completely broken as he flew off. In the blink of an eye, a Paragon died and 2 more had to leave the battle. Su Zimo's gaze shifted towards Chaos Essence Sect's Chen Yitzi, throwing the flying sword in his hands towards the latter. The sword streaked through the air and arrived instantly. There was no way Chen Yitzi would dare receive the attack as he shifted his footsteps, wanting to dodge to the side. Unexpectedly, Chen Yitzi's vision blurred and a tall figure had already arrived in front of him, exuding a terrifying might and endless killing intent. He had arrived almost at the same time as the sword. How fast? Chen Yitzi's eyelids twitched crazily. Boom! Arriving before Chen Yitzi, Su Zimo released the plow heaven stride and stomped heavily on the ground. Instantly, Chen Yitzi's legs buckled and he slowed down. The sword pierced through his body. Chen Yitzi's eyes went dim as a stream of blood spurted out from his chest, severing his life. The Paragon of Chaos Essence Sect was dead too. Chapter 454, Joining Forces to Kill. Chapter 454, Joining Forces to Kill. A resolute intent flickered through Hang Qiuyu's eyes as he turned to flee. Humph! Su Zimo harumphed coldly and caught up to Hang Qiuyu with a few huge strides. He extended his right hand and punched heavily towards the latter's back. Boom! A gigantic fist that resembled a large seal descended from the skies. Instantly, spirit chi exploded with a resounding bang in a terrifying manner. Hang Qiuyu caught sight of it from the side of his eyes and was terrified. If he was struck by that, he wouldn't survive even if he had 10 lives. Sword escape. Keeping his cool in the situation, Hang Qiuyu shouted softly, and the sword chi within him surged out rampantly. Like an unsheathed sword, he flashed and turned into a streak of light, fleeing into the distance. His speed had already crossed the limits. This was a secret skill of Sword Sect that was similar to Blood Escape but lasted for a shorter time. Naturally, the side effects were much less as well. The gigantic seal above was about to descend. However, Hang Qiuyu's sudden speed burst made it such that the seal was about to miss. Hang Qiuyu was delighted. He could already see the sealers charging over. As long as he could withstand another few breaths, the situation would change entirely. At that moment, the sound of a bowstring being pulled sounded in Hang Qiuyu's ears. Pang! 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 He turned slightly and looked towards his back. However, the sight of what was coming scared him out of his wits. Su Zimo was right behind him, shifting like a shadow as his eyes shone with a demonic glint. With a surging killing intent, the former's bones and tendons sounded and his arm expanded multiple inches under the intense stretching. How was that the arm of a human? It was clearly the trunk of a primordial divine elephant. Tearing through the firmament, it seemed like it could smash the stars and destroy the void as it caught up to Hang Qiuyu and slammed down heavily. There was nowhere to escape. In the blink of an eye, Hang Qiuyu dug out another shiny silver circlet from his storage bag and twisted his body, pushing it fiercely towards the incoming fist. Boom! A deafening bang that shook the heavens and earth sounded. As though he was struck by lightning, the sounds of bones cracking could be heard coming from Hang Qiuyu's entire arm. Poof! He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying, his entire face palely yellow. Although he managed to hang onto his life with the use of a Incarnate spirit weapon, he fainted on the spot and laid motionlessly on the ground in a bad condition. By now, the Paragons of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were dead, injured, or have escaped. Demoness G was the only one standing not far away watching everything in astonishment. She finally understood why Su Zimo had to alter his appearance and even transform his body so as to hide his identity. After this battle, there was a high chance that he would offend the entire cultivation world. Disregarding those that were severely injured and crippled, there were 7 Paragons who died in his hands. At that moment, Demoness Ji did not know that with malevolent Earth Sect Shui Yang who died in the Fog Valley outside Xintian City, there were a total of 8 Paragons who died in Su Zimo's hands. Once his identity was exposed, there was a high chance he would be hunted by the experts of the Immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects. Although the world was huge, there wasn't a place where he was absolutely safe. Of course, right now, the most important thing for Su Zimo to consider was how he was going to survive. The sealers had already arrived beneath the human emperor's palace. Among them, Sword Sect and Snowdrift Sect sealers took their respective successors and left the battlefield first to try and heal them. However, 5 sealers filled with killing intents and exuded terrifying auras had already surrounded Su Zimo. They were from Purple Firmament Sect, Clear Wind Temple, Illusion Fiend Cult, Chaos Essence Sect, and Formless Monastery. Since their Paragons were already dead, they had no other choice but to make a move and kill Su Zimo. Your embarrassment has turned into anger? Su Zimo laughed and surveyed his surroundings with mocking eyes. Since they were no match for me one-on-one, they came at me together. After they were defeated, even their sealers are joining forces. Fufufu, that's all there is to the 3 great factions. Bastard of Divine Phoenix Island, your provocations mean nothing to us. You are still going to die. Purple Firmament Sect Sealer had a calm tone, and he was unmoved. Heh. Su Zimo sneered. Old asshole. You think too highly of yourself. I merely wanted to see how shameless cultivators of purple firmament sect were. Bastard, since you're not from our race, you are our common enemy. Clear Wind Temple's sealer waved the horsetail whip in his hands and hollered. Umitba. Formless Monastery's sealer said grimly, Patron, you have no one but your stubbornness to blame for your plight today. A tall tree attracts strong winds. That has always been the case throughout history. Hee. Illusion Fiend Cult's sealer laughed sinisterly. You guys from the immortal and Buddhist sects are truly hypocritical, always finding all sorts of excuses for your actions. I'll let you understand today that the reason why we're joining hands is to murder you because you are talented. Murder me? Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and his blood chi exploded. Despite the fact that he was facing 5 sealers, his aura climbed once more as he yelled, Let's see if you guys have what it takes. He was looking down on 5 golden cores as a Foundation establishment cultivator, regardless of the outcome of the battle. His words alone were enough to set the cultivators watching from afar in shock with racing hearts. At that moment, all the Paragons seemed absolutely inferior. Bang! Boom! Boom! Right then, a sudden sound came from within the human emperor's palace that caused everyone's hearts to skip a beat. Everyone subconsciously looked up. A gigantic cave appeared at the center of the human emperor's palace. It was pitch black, mysteriously dark, and let out waves of terrifying might. The entrance to the human emperor's palace had appeared. This meant that the human emperor's palace has already silently acknowledged someone as a successor. Attack! The 5 sealers shouted and attacked together with a tacit understanding. None of them could sit by and watch Su Zimo enter the human emperor's palace to receive the inheritance. They had to kill him right here. If Su Zimo were to die, the human emperor's palace would either disappear or pick a new successor. There was no way the human emperor's palace would leave its inheritance to a corpse. Die! Purple Firmament Sect's sealer roared and waved his sleeves, causing the endless purple chi that surrounded him to condense into a gigantic sword that shot towards Su Zimo. The purple sword tore through the air and created a gigantic ravine on the ground, causing the earth to toss over and dust to fly everywhere. Su Zimo had already attained lesser mastery of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness's orifice clearing section. He was also at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment realm. Be it his immortal or demonic cultivation, he had not reached their limits, and even in his demon form, his strength was not enough to take on golden cores. If he was faced with a single old sealer, he might have a shot at victory. However, there was no way he could win if all 5 of them attacked at the same time. He had to endure through it. At this life and death moment, Su Zimo's powers were already channeled to their limits, and his bloodline surged while his tendons and bones rang together. Demonic chi rumbled around him, forming menacing demon beasts that were lifelike and filled with killing intent. There was a wild bovine with raised horns, a bear demon that was roaring while standing upright, a coiling anaconda, a demon ape with large arms. Roar! Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo puffed his chest and paused for a moment before letting out an earth-shaking roar in the direction of Purple Firmament Sect Sealer. The ancient demons surrounding him roared at the same time. The void shook, contorting the entire space itself. Su Zimo was like the king of all demons. In the blink of an eye, the world changed. Chapter 455, About to Die? Chapter 455, About to Die. Even the 5 sealers felt a chill upon sensing the malefic aura let out by Su Zimo. This lad must not survive. He was already able to suppress the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment. If he were to obtain the human emperor's inheritance, it was hard to imagine, and they did not dare to either. The stronger the strength and potential displayed by Su Zimo, the more resolved the 5 sealers were to kill him. Scarlet demonic chi rumbled, and the lifelike ancient demons charged while howling, biting, and slamming towards the incoming purple sword. Bang! 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 The sword tore through the air with endless might and a terrifying sharp edge, defeating the ancient demons that were formed with demonic chi one after another. The purple chi and demonic chi, two different powers, collided and corroded one another endlessly. With the dissipation of each demon beast, the scarlet demonic chi surrounding Su Zimo would dim slightly. The purple sword's power was also clearly not as intense as it was initially as its light dimmed. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The purple sword collided against the last demon beast. All the demon beasts and demonic chi had dispersed, and the purple sword turned into streams of purple chi that returned to the world as well. Su Zimo managed to defend against the full-powered attack of a sealer. Furthermore, he defended against it without taking any damage. Su Zimo panted heavily. This time round, he had expended almost all of his strength. Ever since he arrived, he had been fighting. If not for the fact that he possessed shocking stamina and ferocious blood chi, due to his constant cultivation of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, he would have been exhausted long ago. Right now, after defending the sword of Purple Firmament Sect Sealer, Su Zimo felt weakness surge into his head and his arms and feet were powerless. He was thoroughly exhausted. If not for the fact that he was constantly surrounded by strong foes, he would have collapsed long ago. After invoking the power of a golden core, there was only a single outcome for a sealer. They would be mercilessly devoured by a dimensional tear in the ancient battlefield. A series of rips appeared behind Purple Firmament Sect's sealer as a sinister wind howled in a mysterious manner. Looking over, Su Zimo sneered with mockery in his eyes. Purple Firmament Sect's sealer grit his teeth in indignance. Bastard, you don't have to be smug. It won't be long before you'll be joining me. Ha 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 arg. It was a tragic cry. His body was shredded into pieces by the dimension, turning into a blood mist as he was devoured cleanly without a corpse left. A moment later, the dimension stabilized and the tear repaired itself. Swash! A silver beam descended from the skies in a frightening manner. Clear Wind Temple's sealer struck with his horsetail whip and 3,000 silver threads extended countlessly, turning into a massive silver rod that slammed down at Su Zimo's head violently. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and reached out with his right hand, grabbing the incoming silver rod. Bang! There was a dull sound of defeat when the rod and hand collided. Although he managed to grip the silver rod tightly, the flesh on his palm had already exploded and a frightening power surged into his body. His organs were ruptured upon receiving the impact and cracks appeared on the surface. Poof! Su Zimo's gaze dimmed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Thankfully, I have this blood-bone palm. Otherwise, my arm would have been destroyed with this sealer's attack. He lamented internally in gratefulness. Ha, naive. Suddenly, Clear Wind Temple's sealer chuckled with a look of ridicule. Su Zimo's expression changed. Suddenly, the silver rod spread open from his palm, and the 3,000 threads whipped him on the back viciously. Piak! Flashes of blood appeared, accompanied by the sounds of bones cracking. Su Zimo's face turned pale as his knees buckled, almost kneeling on the ground. The change was extremely sudden. The horsetail whip seemed like it was alive and sentient and shifted between flexibility and toughness instantly. Su Zimo's back was whipped into a mess of flesh and blood, as though countless knives were gliding across. The fabric of his torn clothes stuck onto the surface in a frightening manner. His collarbone was broken and hung out in an exposed manner, looking extremely shocking. At that moment, Su Zimo experienced another terrifying aspect of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Its vitality was shocking. If it was any other cultivator or living being, they would have long died after their organs were ruptured and they suffered such severe impacts. However, at this moment, Su Zimo could still stand upright. He could sense his injuries healing slightly with every single breath, except that it was at an extremely slow speed due to his serious injuries. You're still not dead? Clear Wind Temple Sealer's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Su Zimo, who stood upright slowly. His attack was more than enough to split the body of any Foundation establishment cultivator. However, he did not expect Suzimo to stand up once more. What a pity. I just need a little more. The sealer sighed indignantly. However, he no longer had a chance. A dimensional tear appeared and devoured him straight. Even his horsetail whip was shred into pieces. Buzz. Almost at the same time, the sound of a sword buzzing rang out. Go! Chaos Essence Sect Sealer had attacked, pointing his flying sword towards Suzimo. A streak of light appeared instantly. It was the simplest as well as the most effective killing move of cultivators. The moment Chaos Essence Sect Sealer struck, Suzimo sensed a warning in his mind. Without hesitating, in a flash, Suzimo grit his teeth and dodged to the side. Poof! A stream of blood spurted out. He was still a step too slow. The sword pierced his left chest and shot out of his body. Although it missed his heart, a penetration through his lung was enough to be fatal. Instantly, Suzimo had difficulty breathing. He coughed endlessly, as though there was a fire burning in his throat, and his body convulsed for a split moment. This time round, the injury was way too severe. This was the first time he had experienced such a serious injury throughout his cultivation journey. Although his regeneration capabilities were strong, there was a limit to them. It was unknown if he could recover from an injury as such. Furthermore, this was in the ancient battlefield and nobody would accord him the chance to do so. Buzz! In midair, the flying sword turned and retraced its path right after penetrating Suzimo's chest. It was a clear sign of how advanced the sealer of Chaos Essence Sect was in his sword-handling skills. An unprecedented feeling of death arrived. Even without his spirit perception, Suzimo knew that he was extremely close to death and would definitely die if he could not dodge that sword. Bang! Stomping on the ground, he exerted his final bit of strength and leaped forcefully to the side. Shing! A flash of blood appeared and a throbbing pain that struck his marrow surged from his abdomen. The blood drained from Suzimo's face as his knees buckled, almost collapsing onto the ground. By now, he was completely exhausted and was severely injured. It was extremely lucky that he was able to avoid fatal damage. That sword sliced a bloody hole through his abdomen. Suzimo clutched it with his hands immediately to stop his intestines from spilling out. Fresh blood gushed out, seeping through his fingers and flowing down, slowly soaking his clothes with a heavy stench. In the blink of an eye, he was already filled with blood. His head was spinning and he swayed while he felt his vitality leaving his body in an irreversible manner. Am I about to die? Suzimo murmured softly. Suddenly, his vision blurred, as if a bloody figure appeared with an unparalleled might. Even after many years, that figure remained etched in his memories. There was no way for him to erase that scene, and it felt clear as though it was yesterday. Chapter 456. Forgive my inability to comply. Chapter 456. Forgive my inability to comply. Nobody thought that Divine Phoenix Island would have produced a Paragon as such. Yet, it's a pity that he has to die beneath the human emperor's palace. He died a worthwhile death, trading the lives of 7 other Paragons and a couple of sealers. The cultivators watching that blood-stained and swaying figure from afar had complicated expressions as they discussed in hushed whispers with looks of pity. That lone figure looked pitiable and tragic. The cultivators knew that Divine Phoenix Island's successor was about to die, and no one could save him. Suzimo was indeed in a disastrous situation. His left chest was punctured with blood gushing out. His collarbone was smashed and broken while his abdomen had a frightening wound that was so bad his intestines would have spilled out if he wasn't clutching it with his hands. Suzimo could feel his vitality draining from him. Fresh blood was still flowing. His injuries were not showing any signs of healing or recovery. This meant that his injuries had already exceeded the limits of his regeneration capabilities. The sealers of Formless Monastery and Illusion Fiend Cult had yet to make their moves. Even if they were to stand by the sidelines and watch idly, before long, he would still run out of blood and die all the same. Su Zimo's head was giddy and his vision blurred, as if a familiar blood-colored figure flashed before him. "Miss Dai." Instinctively, he called out softly. There was no response. The figure in front turned slightly and raised her brows, glancing at him with endless worry and pity. A faint fragrance wafted over, and Su Zimo was momentarily invigorated as he struggled to open his eyes and look over. After a moment of daze, he opened his mouth but failed to say anything. His head slumped down with evident disappointment. It was not Dayu. It was Demoness Ji. He had lost too much blood, and his vision was blurry. Coupled with the fact that he had been yearning about her for years, Su Zimo mistook Demoness Ji's pink-colored dress as a blood-red color. She has already left long ago and won't be coming back. I still couldn't catch up to her in the end. There's no more chance left. Heis. Su Zimo sighed deeply and his body swayed. His eyelids were heavy and gradually, his consciousness was gone as he fell into the endless abyss. Suddenly, a voice sounded in his ears, jolting Su Zimo's mind and pulling him back from the abyss of death. "Seniors, please let him off." It was Demoness Ji's voice, and she was right in front of him. "Demoness, get lost." Formless Monastery's sealer walked over slowly and hollered with a terrifying aura. "Even if you guys don't attack, he won't be able to survive. What's so bad about leaving him with a complete corpse?" Demoness Ji did not leave, and her voice sounded once more. "The Buddhist sects advocate kindness, so why are you so bent on killing him? The only way to ensure that nothing goes wrong is to kill him personally." Formless Monastery's sealer was unmoved, and he said with a shimmering gaze, "Demoness, if you don't get lost, I'll kill you together with him." A moment later, Demoness Ji's voice sounded once more. Although it was calm and firm, it was shocking. "Forgive my inability to comply." Those words revealed a determination. It was an unwavering conviction to not back off despite knowing that it would result in death. Su Zimo's expression changed. She was facing a sealer. This was a sealer who was completely enraged and could kill her with a single move. Su Zimo did not expect that given the circumstances, Demoness Ji would stand forth and defend him with reckless abandon unyieldingly. What a foolish woman. His lips shifted and his voice was as soft and inaudible as a mosquito. "Very well then." Formless Monastery's sealer nodded expressionlessly as killing intent surged in his eyes. "Since you wish to die, I'll fulfill your wishes." Boom! He channeled his golden core and burst forth with his full power. It was an instant attack with a massive rise in aura. Formless Finger. Reaching out with his finger, he tapped in Demoness Ji's direction. Instantly, heaven and earth shook. How was that a finger? It was clearly a heavenly piercing pillar that streaked through the void with unbridled might, charging over as though it wanted to crush Demoness Ji into smithereens. Su Zimo clenched his teeth and wanted to block the move for Demoness Ji. However, he was too severely injured, and he had no strength left to budge. Demoness Ji blinked her eyes, and a ripple appeared in her beautiful eyes, sending forth a bewitching beam that entered the eyes of Formless Monastery's sealer. Removing her veil, Demoness Ji revealed a flawless face and smiled charmingly. It was a charm that could topple the world. Even the cultivators who were watching from afar were stunned and drooled with agape mouths, let alone Formless Monastery's sealer who was right opposite. She did not merely use the bewitching eye. That was the limit of the pure Maiden Sutra's powers. Although Formless Monastery's sealer was a golden core, he had not cultivated the secret skills of Diamond Monastery and was unable to counter the pure Maiden Sutra perfectly. His heart wavered for a moment, and the power of Formless Finger weakened. "Go!" At the same time, Demoness Ji sent forth a ribbon that shone with a bright spirit light, colliding against the incoming Formless Finger. Bang! There was a deafening sound. Demoness Ji's expression changed starkly as her petite figure shuddered, stumbling in retreat repeatedly. With every single step back, she would spit out a mouthful of blood that was extremely striking. Not everyone could endure the full-powered attack of sealers like Suzimo. If not for the fact that Formless Monastery's sealer was distracted and the power of Formless Finger was diminished, Demoness G would have been torn apart and died. Even so, by the time she staggered backwards to Suzimo's side, she was already severely injured and on the brink of death. A series of sinister tears appeared behind Formless Monastery's sealer. Humph! With a grim expression, he sneered, "I'll give you guys a large gift before my death so that you two lovebirds can go to hell together." Before his sentence was finished, a stream of fire burst forth from the Formless Monastery's sealer's finger and arrived before the two of them. His flames were fiery red, and there was even a shade of gold mixed within, letting off a terrifying aura. True fire. True fires came above level 3 spirit fires. Only golden cores who possessed fire spirit roots could cultivate true fires that could incinerate all Foundation establishment cultivators and even burn pure-blooded ferocious beasts at Foundation establishment realm to ashes. Suzimo's eyes twitched furiously. He was a weapon refinement master as well and had mastery over flames. Naturally, he knew of how powerful true fires were. Previously, none of the sealers produced true fires because they were not cultivators with fire spirit roots. Heaving a deep breath of air, Suzimo used all his might to push away Demoness G, who was in front of him, while bellowing deeply, "Get away!" Swoosh! The flames landed on Suzimo and surged, burning his entire body. In the blink of an eye, he was a man engulfed in flames. Chapter 457, Hand of a Divine Spirit. Chapter 457, Hand of a Divine Spirit. ARR. Suzimo hunched over with his eyes tightly shut. He was in immeasurable pain as his throat let out a hoarse cry. The true fire burned furiously and his body convulsed. Even his flesh sizzled with crackling sounds as his flesh was burnt black in a terrifying sight. In the fire, Suzimo's face was faintly visible, and he was in such deep pain that his features were contorted to an unrecognizable degree. Demoness G's heart ached when she saw the state he was in and her eyes misted. Cough. Her internal injuries acted up and she coughed out another 2 mouthfuls of black blood. There were even pieces of her ruptured organs, and it looked terrifying. To think that I would still end up dying here. Demoness G's eyes dimmed, and she sounded wistful. Her organs were severely damaged after receiving the full blow of a sealer, and her vitality was rapidly draining. Unless she was in possession of some supreme methods, she would be dead for sure. However, in the ancient battlefield, golden cores were already the mightiest figures. How could anyone save her? How could that be? Suddenly, a soft exclamation filled with disbelief sounded not far away. It was the voice of Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer. Instinctively, Demoness G followed the sealer's gaze and looked towards Suzimo once more. At that moment, the true fire burning him had grown much smaller than before and was even showing signs of extinguishing. Demoness G's mouth was slightly agape and her eyes were filled with shock. Although Suzimo was almost charcoal black by now and was billowing with smoke, the flames surrounding him were indeed getting weaker. Or rather, they were reversing. The fiery flames trembled slightly, as if they were directed towards Suzimo's right hand by some mysterious force, entering his blood-bone palm. Apart from Suzimo, no one else knew or could explain what was happening to him. Initially, his injuries were way too severe that they had exceeded his regeneration capabilities. As such, he could not recover and was bleeding the entire time. If not for the true fire, he would have died of blood loss. However, the flames of the true fire had cauterized his wounds and stopped the bleeding temporarily, saving his life. At the same time, a mysterious change was happening to the blood-bone palm under the burn of the true fire. It was as though a seal had been undone, summoning a hidden power within Suzimo that was devouring the true fire on him without any care. Before the true fire could threaten Suzimo, the blood-bone palm had already consumed a large portion of it. It could be said that through some freak turn of events, The true fire had instead saved Suzimo's life. A terrifying aura was growing, shrouding around the blood-bone palm. Ta, ta, ta. The sound of footsteps filled with killing intent surged over in a suffocating manner. Demoness G's heart sank. Formless Monastery Sealer was already devoured by the Dimensional Tear, and Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer was the only one left. The flames on Suzimo's body had yet to extinguish, and he stood on the spot like a burnt charcoal. His eyes were shut and his aura was weak. Demoness G grit her teeth and pushed herself up with her trembling arms. After multiple failures, she finally struggled to stand up before staggering in front of Suzimo. Although it was a simple motion, she had expended the final bit of her strength. Her body swayed unsteadily, as if a single gust of wind could knock her over. However, when she raised her head and looked towards Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer, who was striding over murderously, her eyes were filled with unprecedented resolve. She knew that her injuries were already beyond the point of no return, but it was not the case for Suzimo. The Human Emperor's Palace. That might be Suzimo's only chance. Multiple signs had already indicated that Suzimo was this generation's successor for the Human Emperor's Palace. As long as he entered it, he might be able to survive. Of course, that was only a possibility. Nobody knew what was inside the Human Emperor's Palace. The footsteps vanished. Arriving in front of Demoness G, Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer paused with a cold expression. The way you're protecting him, don't tell me that this bastard is your tripod? Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer asked slowly. The way he looked at Demoness G was filled with mockery and ridicule. So what if he is? Her face turned darker and grimmer, and the vitality exuding from her body was almost negligible. If not for her thread of determination that was keeping her going, she would have collapsed long ago. Ha 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 ha. It was as tough the sealer of Illusion Fiend Cult had just heard the greatest joke in the world. Even the sealers of Overlord Palace and Cloud Rain Sect frowned, looking at Demoness G in disbelief. Foolish, how foolish. After laughing, he shook his head regrettably. To think that this generation's pure maiden of the Fiend sects would be a lovelorn fool, picking a cultivator as a tripod. How laughable. Demoness G pursed her lips and her eyelids were getting heavier. She could no longer hear the sealer clearly. It merely felt as though her ears were buzzing with noises close and far as her consciousness faded. The reason why you're fighting with your life is to buy time for this little bastard to enter the Human Emperor's Palace. Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer sneered. However, it's a pity that both of you will have to die. Today, I'll kill you so that you don't bring about disgrace for Pure Maiden Sect as well as the Fiend sects. The moment he said that, the sealer's eyes shone with killing intent, and he whipped out a shimmering, flexible sword from his waist. Swoosh! With a fling, the sword turned straight. Even against two helpless Foundation establishment cultivators who were on the brink of death, the sealer had no intention of showing mercy as he burst forth with his power as a golden core and thrust forward. That attack was enough to skewer the both of their heads together. The sword she was extremely cold and possessed wild might. Demoness G could hold on no longer as she collapsed to the side. Suddenly, an arm reached out and held up her body. The next moment, Demoness G caught sight of a figure through her blurred vision. Although he was burnt charcoal black and was disfigured, she could recognize him. Those eyes burned with a bloodshot gleam as though they wanted to devour someone. Suddenly, Suzimo reached out with his right arm. Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer's eyes constricted in shock. There was no flesh on his palm, and it was just a scarlet bone that was burning with thin flames, emitting a terrifying aura that seemed as though it could incinerate the heavens and oceans, annihilating all living beings. It was as though it was the hand of a divine spirit that let out a shuddering aura. Even the sealers who were watching from nearby, as well as the cultivators watching from afar, felt chills run down their spines, let alone Illusion Fiend Cult Sealer. Some of the cultivators could not endure that might and fell to the ground on the spot, shivering in fear. A feeling of inferiority grew in the hearts of many cultivators. The blood-bone palm reached out for the flexible sword. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. Before it could reach the blood-bone palm, the sword was melted into liquid steel and dripped onto the ground. A perfect-grade spirit weapon was destroyed just like that. The sealer had nowhere to run with the dimensional tear appearing in his back. In his eyes, he could only see a burning palm arriving with a flame that grew more and more intense. Chapter 458, Divine Phoenix Bone. Chapter 458, Divine Phoenix Bone. Right in front of everyone, that burning blood-bone palm penetrated the illusion fiend cult sealer's body with ease. It did not pause at all, similar to how a blazing steel sword would pierce a thin veil. In the blink of an eye, illusion fiend cult sealer was devoured by the flames. The next moment, he turned into ashes. A golden core was incinerated to ashes by that terrifying flame in less than a second without any corpse left. Complete silence ensued within 1,000 meters from the human emperor's palace. All the cultivators felt an inexplicable sense of repression as their chests stuffed up, making breathing difficult. "Look!" someone from the crowd exclaimed. Without the need for any reminders, everyone's gazes landed on that blood-bone palm. At that moment, the void around the blood-bone palm began to distort after being burned by the intense flames. A series of tears appeared, gusting with sinister winds. The rules of the ancient battlefield had been violated, triggering a dimensional tear. Pissed, everyone gasped. This meant that the flames on that palm had already reached the level of a golden core's power. A sinister aura gushed out from the dimensional tear. The flames on the blood-bone palm flickered against the sinister wind, lasting for a moment before finally extinguishing. Right after, all the cultivators watched with alarmed gazes. The dimensional tears that appeared around the blood-bone palm devoured it, but spat it back out. It was spat out intact. The ripping power of the dimensional tear was incomparably strong to begin with and could tear the bodies of golden cores or even nascent souls apart. The moment one was dragged away by the dimensional tear, they would endure an incredibly horrific wild current of the void. Even nascent souls or void reversions would have their essence spirits destroyed without any corpses remaining. Legend has it that only mighty patriarchs could endure the wild currents of the void and travel through it freely. Yet, the dimensional tear could not devour that blood-bone palm. After it was taken in and washed by the wild currents, it was still intact. What exactly was that? That was not the bone of a human being. Divine Phoenix Island's successor, blood-bone palm flames. All the clues seemed to lead towards a certain truth. Could the legend be for real? Sword Sex Sealer shuddered uneasily, as though he had just recalled something frightening. What legend? The other sealers looked towards him one after another. Do you guys know of the origin of Divine Phoenix Island? Sword Sex Sealer asked instead. Another sealer replied with a frown. Initially, Divine Phoenix Island was just a lone island overseas. Legend has it that in an unknown era long ago, the skies rained with fire and the firmaments collapsed. Among that, a pure-blooded Divine Phoenix's corpse landed on that island. Thereafter, the island was named as the Divine Phoenix Island. At that point, the sealer suddenly paused. As though he recalled something as well, he was shocked and asked slowly, "You mean to say?" That legend was too long ago and has always been spread through the mortal world. It was created by storytellers. There's no way it can be true, right? Another sealer refused to believe it. Phoenixes were definitely divine spirits that were as strong as perfected immortals. In the cultivation world, there had never been accurate records about the existence of divine phoenixes on Tianhuang mainland. Nobody had seen a pure-blooded phoenix, and the only things left were figments of the legends. Prior to this, if anyone said that there was a pure-blooded living being in the world that possessed a might comparable to a perfected immortal, nobody would believe it. But now, the sealers present went silent. Suddenly, Overlord Palace's sealer said, "In the ancient manuals of the fiend sects, there's a legend about the phoenix race. It's said that the Phoenix race is a mighty race that's even comparable in strength to the dragons. They wield the strongest and most frightening flames in the universe and can incinerate all living beings. Male phoenixes are called Fengs, while female phoenixes are called Huangs. Pure-blooded phoenixes, also known as undying divine phoenixes, are reborn through nirvana each time they incinerate themselves and become even stronger. Therefore, in Tianhuang mainland, be it in the cultivation or mortal world, there's always the saying of a phoenix undergoing nirvana for a rebirth through flames. That saying is an explanation of the capabilities of the divine phoenixes. Another sealer asked, "What's the difference between the two?" Overlord Palace's sealer replied, "The ancient manuals recorded that phoenixes would always leave something behind during each rebirth. When the undying Feng is bathed in flames, he leaves behind a drop of divine phoenix essence blood. When the undying Huang is bathed in flames, she leaves behind a piece of divine phoenix bone." At that point, everyone felt their hearts skip a beat. They made the connection between this person from the divine Phoenix Island and his blood-bone palm with the terrifying flame that was burning on it. They were close to the truth. "You mean to say that his right hand is actually a piece of the divine Phoenix's bone?" a sealer exclaimed. If that deduction was correct, that divine Phoenix bone would be the greatest treasure throughout Tianhuang mainland, or even the cultivation world, and was irreplaceable. In that case, it would naturally explain why the dimensional tear was unable to devour that bone and why the wild currents in the void could not destroy it. It would make sense for the divine phoenix bone to be an immortal object. Even a mighty patriarch would be tempted to get his hands on it. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sealers had a tacit understanding and set their sights on Su Zimo's right hand. They could not conceal the greed in their eyes. All of them were golden cores reaching the end of their lifespans. Now that they were sent into the ancient battlefield with the successors of their respective sects, it was partly due to the threat that they would be able to provide. On the other hand, all of them harbored thoughts of seeking out opportunities or treasures to increase their lifespans so that they could continue cultivating and break through to the nascent soul realm. Since the divine phoenix bone was an object left behind by the undying Huang's rebirth through nirvana, it would definitely possess unimaginable divine power, and if they could get their hands on it, they might be able to extend their lives. Although Su Zimo was able to kill Illusion Fiend Cult's sealer with the blood-bone palm, his internal injuries had yet to heal up and his vitality was still draining, almost completely depleted. Demoness G was in a similar condition. To everyone, Su Zimo and Demoness G were two dead people. All they had to consider was how they were going to get their hands on the divine phoenix bone in the ensuing fight after severing Su Zimo's hand. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out from the human emperor's palace's entrance, descending upon Su Zimo. A massive power sucked Su Zimo, causing him to rise slowly. "Go on. If you manage to survive, I hope you can still remember me." Demoness G tilted her head and leaned in Su Zimo's embrace like a weak girl. Although her eyes were filled with sadness and reluctance, she faked a smile nevertheless. Chapter 459, Human Emperor's Palace's Compromise. Chapter 459, Human Emperor's Palace's Compromise. Su Zimo did not say anything, but he did not let go. Throughout history, there would only be a single successor chosen for the human emperor's palace's appearance. Right now, as long as Su Zimo let go of Demoness G, he would be able to enter the human emperor's palace rightfully. However, he knew that if he were to let go, she would definitely have no chance of surviving. Su Zimo did not care about the relationship between Demoness G and Ji Yaoxue, or ponder about what it meant to be her tripod. The only thing he knew was that if Demoness G had not sacrificed herself to buy time for him earlier on, he would have been killed by the sealers of Formless Monastery and Illusion Fiend Cult and would not have lasted till now. He held onto Demoness G obstinately and refused to let go. To the many cultivators, this was a choice that seemed foolish, even stupid. It was precisely because of this reason that the both of them stopped in midair during the rise, unable to head up or down. It was an undeniable rule that the human emperor's palace would only select a single successor. Right now, Su Zimo's choice was challenging the rule of the human emperor's palace, challenging the might of the human emperor himself. The sealers were delighted upon seeing that. If Su Zimo were to enter the human emperor's palace successfully, they would miss their chance of seizing the divine phoenix bone. How foolish! He doesn't know what's good for him. A cultivator sneered. Another cultivator shook his head and sighed. To think that Mad Blade would be such a sentimental man. Isn't that right? Not many people would have the courage to make such a choice. If he entered the human emperor's palace, not only would he be able to survive, he would also be able to obtain the human emperor's inheritance. Who could resist such a temptation? Snowdrift Valley's Ling Han bit her lips and looked on with a conflicted expression. What did his choice represent? It meant that at this moment, this man was willing to abandon his life and the human emperor's inheritance in order to save Demoness G. Even if there was only a sliver of hope. As a woman, she felt a tinge of envy towards Demoness G from the bottom of her heart. Let go. Demoness G frowned deeply. Her eyelids were so heavy that she could not make out Su Zimo's face clearly, and her frail voice carried a hint of anxiousness. Don't feel guilty. The reason I saved you is because you saved me before as well. If not for you, I would have been killed by that damned monk long ago. I'm just repaying you right now. There was still no response. Let me go. It was still silent. However, Demoness G could sense him hugging her even closer. The both of them hovered in midair in a stalemate with the human emperor's palace. The remaining few sealers were already on their way. The two of them were already at the end of the road with no strength to fight back. Even without releasing their powers as golden cores, the sealers could kill the two of them with just power at the level of Foundation Establishment Realm. Die! The first sealer to arrive was from Sword Sect. Buzz! The sound of a sword buzzing rang out and an unparalleled sword beam flashed. Instead of aiming for Su Zimo's vitals, it tried to sever his wrist. Su Zimo looked at that sword without moving. Given his current condition, any Chi refinement warrior would be able to kill him, let alone the sealer of Sword Sect. Swash! The sword beam struck the column of light from the human emperor's palace and created a ripple before vanishing instantly. Su Zimo was unharmed. The sealers were alarmed when they saw that. All of a sudden, as though it was agitated, that column of light shone brightly in a bedazzling manner. Countless beams of light shot forth and instantly penetrated the body of Sword Sect sealer. Poof, poof, poof. Flashes of blood gushed out continuously. The sealer's body was punctured by the illusionary beams of light, and the next moment, he exploded into a blood mist without a corpse left. Upon seeing that, the remaining few sealers were shocked and terrified. Among them, Heavenly Dipper Sect Sealer had already released his secret skill which struck the column of light. The column of light shook and shot forth countless beams once more, engulfing the sealer of Heavenly Dipper Sect. That person was rather impressive as a glint of determination flickered through his eyes. Roaring, he released his power as a golden core, wanting to fight against the light beams before him. Bang! He turned into a mist of blood and died on the spot. Although it was only a column of light beneath the human emperor's palace, its might could not be challenged, and it was enough to suppress everything, killing with a single touch. The others hurriedly stopped in their tracks and escaped, not daring to linger. They only came to a stop outside the boundaries of the human emperor's palace before turning back to look with fear in their hearts. The man and woman were still hovering in midair within that gigantic column of light, hugging together without separating. The sealers looked grim with indignant expressions. There was no way they could get their hands on the divine phoenix bone, given the current situation. Let's wait a little more, there might still be a chance. After a moment, Hollow Monastery's sealer composed himself and said slowly with a shimmering gaze. That's right. Overlord Palace's sealer said in a dark tone. He's only a mere Foundation Establishment cultivator, and yet he dares to challenge the human emperor's palace? He's bound to fail. If this carries on, the both of them will definitely die. The few sealers nodded in agreement. If the two of them were dead, the human emperor's palace would either disappear or select a new successor. No matter the outcome, the successor of Divine Phoenix Island would lose the protection of the human emperor's palace. At that time, they would have the chance to sever his wrist and fight for the Divine Phoenix bone. Right now, all the sealers had to do was wait. Demoness G leaned in Su Zimo's embrace motionlessly, and it was unable to tell if she was dead. Su Zimo's aura was also getting increasingly weaker. Raising his head, he looked at the mysterious entrance of the human emperor's palace and narrowed his gaze with a resolute expression. It was as though he would never relent nor compromise. A long time later, just as Su Zimo was gradually losing his consciousness, a change happened in midair. The two of them started rising slowly, as though they were pulled by something. In the blink of an eye, both of them entered the human emperor's palace and disappeared. There was a deathly silence. Upon seeing that, everyone was dumbfounded and even forgot to breathe. How is that possible? A long time later, Hollow Monastery's sealer murmured to himself with widened eyes and a lost expression. The human emperor's palace actually came to a compromise? Overlord Palace's sealer chuckled bitterly. Since the human emperor's palace was sentient, it naturally possessed the intent of the human emperor. Throughout history, the human emperor had been the strongest emperor and was unparalleled. Since the human emperor's palace represented him, how could it bow down and relent? Furthermore, how could it do so for the sake of a mere foundation establishment cultivator? If everyone had not seen it for themselves, none of them would have believed it. Was it pity? Or was there some other reason? Nobody knew. The entrance of the human emperor's palace closed. Bang! Boom! Boom! The ancient palace shook and dust fell endlessly as it rose into the air slowly, disappearing beyond the horizons of the heavens. The clouds dissipated and the thunderstorm subsided, spilling warm sunlight everywhere. The skies were clear once again. Yet, there was a murky fog in the hearts of all the sealers. Chapter 460, Historic Monster Incarnate. Chapter 460, Historic Monster Incarnate. The human emperor's palace had long disappeared. However, the paragons who managed to survive and the sealers of the super sects looked in its direction for the longest time with conflicted expressions and silence. They felt an inexplicable sense of repression. That man should be dead, right? A long time later, Heavenly Dipper Sect's Paragon asked hesitantly. Overlord Palace's Pang Yu nodded. He should be. After a moment, as though he was trying to convince himself, Pang Yu repeated with conviction, he must be. That's right, he's definitely dead. He's already so badly injured. Unless there's some divine method to resurrect the dead and regrow flesh, he's definitely dead for sure. That's right. The human emperor's palace only contains its inheritance. How could there be anything to save his life? Almost at the same time, the remaining paragons heaved a sigh of relief, as if a burden was lifted off their shoulders. All of them looked at ease and smiled gently. The sealers present were expressionless as they exchanged glances. All of them could tell of the worry in the other's eyes. To old people like themselves who had lived for hundreds of years, the reactions and deductions of their juniors felt more like lies to make themselves feel better. Even they were unsure if the successor of Divine Phoenix Island was still alive. That was because nobody knew what was inside the human emperor's palace. It would be fine if the Divine Phoenix Island's successor died in the human emperor's palace. If he survived and was reborn. Everything else aside, none of the paragons who had entered the ancient battlefield this time round, Hang Qiuyu, Pang Yu, Monk Ju-chun, and the others included, would be a match for that man. That was because all of those paragons would be fearful. Subconsciously, all of them were hoping that the successor of Divine Phoenix Island would die, instead wishing for his survival so that they could fight him once more. In this battle, the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects were defeated so badly that their confidence was destroyed. Clear Heart Nunnery's sealer murmured, The fact that they're able to produce such a paragon is a clear sign that the light of providence is shining on them. Could this generation be the rise of Divine Phoenix Island once more? It's probably unsuitable to refer to him as a paragon anymore. That's right. Given his potential, bearing, guts, and methods, he can be called a monster incarnate. Not just that, he's a rare monster incarnate throughout history. The few sealers were clear about how much of a stir it would cause once news of this spread to Tianhuang mainland. The entire cultivation world might be moved because of this. It's all right, Hollow Monastery's sealer said calmly. No matter how strong that lad is, he's only at Foundation Establishment realm. His future is still unknown. Given the firm foundations of our sects, we have rare monster incarnates as well. That's true. If he meets against the legacy disciples of our sects, he shouldn't have much of a chance of winning. Everyone conversed for a little more before separating. The battlefield was left with nothing but a pile of corpses, as though telling a tale of how tragic that battle was. A month later, Xinjiang City. The arrival of a piece of news caused a huge uproar. A monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island, and this generation's pure maiden of the Fiend sex, entered the human emperor's palace, and their fates are unknown. Where did you get that news from? It's fake, right? Throughout history, the human emperor's palace has only allowed a single person in. How can both of them enter together? It's absolutely true. A senior brother of mine witnessed it personally. It's said that the corpses beneath the human emperor's palace can form a mountain, and there are rivers of blood. More than half of the paragons from the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects are dead, and some were crippled on the spot. How can that be? Aren't there sealers? The sealers died as well. I heard that at the end of it all, a few sealers tried joining hands to fight the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island, and were even killed in return. Wow, what's the name of that person? Mad Blade. In a small little mansion with 2 stories within Elixir Yang sect, Tang Yu stood in front of a window. Her hands were behind her back, and she frowned slightly in deep thought. The news of the human emperor's palace was truly shocking indeed. However, what she was more worried about was Su Zimo's situation. The strangest thing was that although she tried scouting for news from multiple sources, nothing returned, as though Su Zimo had vanished into thin air as nobody caught sight of him at all. At the side, Uncle Yang could read Tang Yu's mind and said with a smile, "Young master, you don't have to worry. Given Su Zimo's methods, even if he can't win, he can definitely escape alive." Yes. Tang Yu nodded. I'm not worried about him, but I'm confused. Given his personality, since he chose to fight for the human emperor's palace's inheritance, how come there is no news at all? For certain people, their glamours can never be contained. Ever since he entered Xinjiang City, Su Zimo caused an earth-shaking change to the state of the entire place. The 4 mounted bandits were the first to be removed, followed by Poison Sect. Even powerful super sects with formidable foundations such as Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect were swept away by him. How could there be no news of a cultivator that was so aggressive and domineering? Uncle Yang, when I heard that the name of monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island was called Mad Blade, I even suspected that he's Su Zimo. Tang Yu said coldly, both of them make use of sabers and have knowledge of the Sea Calming Manual. Furthermore, they are both at the Tsunami Blood Realm and are at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment. That's impossible. Uncle Yang shook his head. Although both of them use sabers, Su Zimo has his perfect grade blood quencher, while this monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island merely used a supreme grade spirit saber. Moreover, it's said that this person is extremely tall and bulky and is a burly man with a rough appearance. The two of them differ too much in terms of appearances. Tang Yu nodded. There was truly no way to explain it. Although they had their similarities, their differences were even more. Uncle Yang continued, also, although Su Zimo is strong, he isn't at the state where he's able to take down the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and Fiend sects, let alone a couple of sealers as well. Back then, in the Elixir Pool sect ruins, Su Zimo had to take a long time before baiting the sealer of Glass Palace to death. In terms of actual combat strength, Su Zimo was clearly far inferior. However, the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island fought against a couple of sealers and even killed them in return. The difference between them was too great. Tang Yu nodded. No matter what, I hope that fellow Taoist Su can return safely. At the entrance of the mansion, Su Xiaoning hugged her knees and sat on a stone step with a worried expression. There was a pitch-black demon beast beside her. A cold glint shimmered between its half-opened eyes. It was Night Spirit who was guarding Xiaoning. Heis. Sighing gently, Xiaoning murmured, all the cultivators in the city are discussing that monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and Mad Blade, but there's still no news of brother. I don't even know how he's doing right now. Growl. Night Spirit opened its eyes and yawned listlessly. Xiaoning frowned and asked, You're saying that brother is fine? How do you know that, brother? You've been with me the entire time, and you haven't received any news either. Sitting up, Night Spirit extended its paw and gestured in a human-like manner while crying out repeatedly. Xiaoning's eyes widened. While others may not have understood, Xiaoning did. Her heart skipped a beat as she exclaimed, You mean to say that Mad Blade is? Night Spirit gestured with a shushing hand sign. Understanding, Xiaoning clutched her cherry lips immediately. Instantly, the worry on her face disappeared and she grinned, causing her eyes to look like crescent moons in a painting. Chapter 461. Resurrection and Regrowth of Flesh. Chapter 461. Resurrection and Regrowth of Flesh. Hugging the unconscious demoness Ji into the human emperor's palace, Su Zimo could no longer hold on either and was fainting. He was too badly injured and had lost too much blood. His flesh and skin were burnt to a crisp and his organs were failing. He had already gone beyond his body's regeneration capabilities. If he hadn't cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and possessed shocking vitality, he would have long been dead. In his daze, Su Zimo suddenly felt his hands get lighter. A long time later, he finally snapped out of his stupor. Enduring the immense pain, he turned to his side with extreme difficulty. Demoness Ji, who was initially lying in his embrace, had disappeared. Bang! Before he had time to think, his body shuddered and he collapsed onto the cold, hard ground with a throbbing headache. Su Zimo struggled to sit up, wanting to look for Demoness Ji. However, he caught sight of a hazy fog that was approaching him from not far away. The fog billowed and surged over. Just as it was about to arrive before him, the gray fog condensed into a hazy figure. Although the person's face was old, he was energetic and his eyes had a wise, deep look, as if he had seen through everything in the world. Su Zimo was stunned on the spot. He had not imagined that there would be a living being within this ancient palace. The human emperor's palace was a relic of the ancient era and had been through countless years in the sands of time where endless supreme and mighty figures have been buried. Time was the scariest thing which even emperors could not defend against. Who was that old man? Was he a character from the ancient era, or was he a cultivator who had entered the human emperor's palace later on but was trapped here? Or perhaps, was this old man the legendary human emperor? Su Zimo did not have the energy to contemplate those questions, and neither could he hang on any longer as he collapsed. Gazing at the ceiling, he found his vision blurring. The old man approached him and suddenly reached out. Between his fingers was an elixir the size of a longan. It gave off a faint smell of blood. For some reason, the aura the elixir gave off felt extremely familiar to Su Zimo. The old man peeled open Su Zimo's mouth and put the elixir inside. Su Zimo had no strength to resist and the elixir melted in his mouth, sending a spicy warmth down his throat. Upon entering his stomach, it lingered for a moment before suddenly letting out a terrifying burst of energy. The energy felt like a tidal wave as it surged and cruised through his limbs. An intense blood chi shot forth, wrapping Su Zimo in it as an extremely rich aura of vitality spewed out. One after another, beams of rainbow lights shot out in a divine manner, nourishing every single bit of his flesh. His body that was initially defeated was reignited with vitality. His injuries healed internally and externally as his charcoal black flesh peeled away. Pieces of flesh started regenerating on his bones with endless vitality. It was a regrowth of his flesh. This was a miracle almost akin to resurrection. A numbing sensation prickled through Su Zimo's nerves, almost causing him to go insane. Ah! Su Zimo could not help but let out a long bellow. The power within the elixir nourished his broken body like the way dew healed barren land. His dried flesh regrew and the tears on his organs closed, returning to normal. Su Zimo's vitality was regenerating continuously. With the help of that energy, his physique's strong regeneration capabilities were awakened once more as his blood qi ran rampant within his body. Flesh could be seen growing at a visible speed near the wound on his abdomen, forming in pieces before combining together, merely leaving a faint scar. It was the same for the injury on his left chest. Although his collarbone was snapped earlier on, it was now piecing back together rapidly. Sometime later, cracks appeared on Su Zimo's charred skin and his scabs fell one after another, revealing jade-smooth skin beneath. In the blink of an eye, all of his scabs had fallen off without any scars left behind as he emitted a massive wave of vitality. All his injuries were healed. That was not all the changes brought about by the elixir. Not only did the elixir possess a massive vitality essence, it also contained terrifying blood qi and pure spirit energy. Initially, the spirit sea in Su Zimo's dantian had already dried up. Right now, spirit energy was gushing in endlessly, forming a sea with massive waves that was even fiercer than before. Su Zimo's cultivation realm was rising swiftly, and he was at the peak of 7 Meridian Foundation establishment before long. He did not even need to guide it. The spirit sea surged and a series of pure, rich spirit energy pushed against his body's 8th spirit meridian. Bang, bang, bang. There were a series of loud bangs, and almost no time was wasted as the momentum brought him through. He had unlocked his 8th spirit meridian. Throughout history, there may have been no other cultivator who managed to unlock their 8th spirit meridian as easily as Su Zimo without the need to even consume a meridian unlocking elixir. Even after unlocking his 8th spirit meridian, his spirit sea did not calm down and was still roaring furiously. His cultivation realm was still climbing. A long time later, it finally came to a stop when he was at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. At that moment, Su Zimo was finally certain. After the 8th spirit meridian, there was definitely a 9th spirit meridian, the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment. He was still in possession of a meridian unlocking elixir. Su Zimo planned to attempt to unlock his 9th spirit meridian after stabilizing down at this current cultivation realm so as to become the second person to reach the Extreme Foundation establishment realm after the human emperor. At the same time, the terrifying blood qi in the elixir restructured Su Zimo's body as well. Crack, crack, crack. A series of crackling sounds echoed from within his body as his tendons and bones rang together. His blood qi climbed, and he was surrounded by a thick, demonic qi, causing multiple ancient demons to form. A mysterious glow shone from his 7 orifices, turning brighter and brighter. A moment later, Su Zimo's body shuddered, and his 7 orifices shone brightly. His power of blood qi exploded, and his skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow, organs, and orifices synergized with one another, forming a major heavenly cycle. He had attained greater mastery of the orifice clearing section. All of a sudden, his eyes jolted wide open, and a beam of light that tore through the night shot forth in a bedazzling manner. Rising upright, Su Zimo felt his blood qi rumble like a tsunami as a rainbow light shone from his organs. His major tendons were firm, his bones were lively, and his flesh was flawless. Upon closer inspection, he could even see a mysterious luster cruising through them. It was as though he had attained a perfect body. Su Zimo could clearly sense that his body was different, and his 5 senses were even more keen. Without even opening his eyes, He could hear the sounds of fishes playing in a pond nearby as the image was visualized in his mind. Meek as a virgin with the burst power of a rabbit, his body was even more coordinated with the fusion of toughness and flexibility. With every single motion of his arm, he could produce limitless power with a rampant might. At this point of your cultivation, you would have perfected your technique and cultivated universal sight and hearing. With the help of the spirit perception, you will be able to avoid danger without seeing or smelling it. Be it whether you're moving, sitting, or lying down, your heart will be able to sense, and you will be able to defeat your enemies within 10 feet with your bare hands. Su Zimo could not help but recall the words that Dai Yu left him with as he murmured to himself, "I'm here now." Chapter 462, Mysterious Old Man. Chapter 462. Mysterious old man looking at his brand new body, Su Zimo lamented to himself as he experienced the power surging within him. The human emperor's palace is truly an ancient mythical object. To think that a single elixir from it would possess such wondrous effects. At that moment, Su Zimo's appearance had already returned to normal after being washed by the energy of the elixir. With his elegant features, he wore a set of green robes once more. There was no one else around other than that mysterious old man who had disappeared. Since his disguise methods were most probably child's play that would be seen through instantly in the eyes of the old man, Su Zimo had no intention of continuing with it. He looked around and saw that the place was extremely spacious and boundless. Rather than a palace, it seemed like they were in another world. The air was refreshing and the spirit chi was richer. The environment was even better than the ancient battlefield. Concerned about Demonish Ji's safety, he sped forward with his spirit wings. Life was vibrant in that spacious land, and it was filled with greenery. Far away, at the side of a gigantic lake, a white deer was drinking water. It had a pair of wings on its back, and its eyes darted around with spirit. Raising its head, the white deer was not afraid in the slightest bit when it caught sight of Su Zimo. Its ears twitched slightly, as if it was curious. Su Zimo sped across the surface of the lake. Thud, thud. Gigantic scarlet fishes leaped out of the lake, as if they were startled. Each of them was around 8 feet long and was shaped like a carp with a pair of tiny horns on its head. Each of them looked like they weighed a few kilograms. When they twitched and fell back into the lake, ripples were formed. Those are... Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart stirred when he caught sight of those gigantic scarlet fishes as he exclaimed, "Hungong fishes." Hungong fishes had succulent flesh and were extremely shiny. Containing extremely few bones, they possessed a massive amount of energy, and it was a great tonic to strengthen one's tendons and bones when consumed. That was definitely a pure-blooded living being of the primordial era and had long gone extinct on Tianhuang mainland. Screech. In the skies far away, a clear cry could be heard. A gigantic bird streaked through the skies. The left half of its body was green and the right half of its body was red. Focusing his gaze, Su Zimo's was shocked and nearly fell from midair. That wasn't a gigantic bird. It was a pair of birds. The ancient manuals back in the sect had a few short sentences describing a bird of the primordial era. The being bird only had a single eye and wing, and the males were green while the females were red. Together, the couple must fly in tandem. Back when he saw that description, Su Zimo even shook his head and laughed to himself, thinking that it was impossible. How could there be a type of bird in the world that could fly with only a single eye and wing? Now that he was seeing it for himself, Su Zimo truly experienced how incredible the universe was. At the same time, a thought flashed through his mind as he spun around and looked at the white deer with wings beside the lake. Leaping, the white deer spread its wings and flew into the skies. It came to Su Zimo's side and lowered its head, brushing against his arm intimately before flying off. Bai Zhe. That was an auspicious mythological beast of the primordial era, Bai Zhe. Legend has it that the Bai Zhe was snow white with wings and could speak in human tongue. It understood the emotions of all living beings and could distinguish between all the beings in the world, be it ghosts, gods, or any other living beings. This was an auspicious beast that could change one's luck for the better. The legends are real, Suzimo muttered softly. Taking a deep breath of air, he soared into the skies and looked around before shuddering uncontrollably. He stood rooted to the spot as shock filled his eyes. Countless mythical and different beasts roamed this vast land. There was a 3D brutish beast with flames on its leg, a purple chicken with eyes under its wings, a rat that was 100 kilograms and filled with raging flames, a 3D golden toad with scales. The beasts were so incredible that Suzimo had never heard of them before. He couldn't even name them. In fact, he even suspected if he had reversed through time and returned to the primordial era. All of a sudden, his heart skipped a beat and his gaze froze. Not far away, an old man stood with his hands behind his back. That was the mysterious old man who fed him the elixir. Without thinking twice, Suzimo arrived before the mysterious old man in a flash. Bowing deeply, he said with sincerity, "Thank you for rescuing me, Senior. I'm truly immensely grateful." The mysterious old man merely nodded and stared at Suzimo with scrutinizing eyes. At that moment, Suzimo had countless questions on his mind. Who was the old man before him? What was that elixir? Was this the human emperor's palace? Why were there so many incredible beasts? However, those questions merely fluttered through his mind as he asked, "Senior, may I ask where the girl who entered the human emperor's palace together with me is?" Expressionlessly, the mysterious old man replied, "She's not here." "Not here?" Suzimo's heart clenched up as he asked hurriedly, "Where is she?" "We entered the human emperor's palace together. How can she not be here?" "What are you getting anxious about?" The mysterious old man rolled his eyes and harumphed gently. "I was merely saying that the lass is not in the same stone chamber as you." "Stone chamber?" Suzimo was confused. Pointing at his feet, the mysterious old man remarked casually, "The world we are in right now is merely a single stone chamber in the human emperor's palace." Gradually, Suzimo's mouth fell open. He was dumbfounded and shock filled his eyes. This world with skies and stars, possessing boundless land with mountains, lush greenery, and countless incredible beasts, was actually just a stone chamber within the human emperor's palace. What sort of powers were these? The mysterious old man's next sentence gave Suzimo an even bigger shock, such that he could not snap out of it for a long time. "There's billions of such stone chambers in the human emperor's palace," the mysterious old man said casually with a calm expression. Suzimo. A long time later, still worried about Demonish G, he asked, "How is that girl in pink?" "Don't worry, she won't die. She'll follow her own destiny," the mysterious old man replied. Suzimo only heaved a sigh of relief upon hearing that. Heh. Suddenly, the mysterious old man sneered, "Young man, you're truly brazen to challenge the rules set by my master. If it wasn't because my mistress was kind enough to speak up for you seeing how pitiful that girl is, she would have died long ago." "Master, mistress." Suzimo blinked and asked in a testing manner, "Senior, the master you're referring to is, can you get any dumber?" Frowning, the mysterious old man glared at Suzimo and said in a deep tone, "Since this is the human emperor's palace, my master is definitely the human emperor." Suzimo was shocked. Needless to say, the mistress should be the human emperor's Tao companion. The mysterious old man glanced at Suzimo from the side of his eyes and sized up the latter while muttering, "This young man seems dumb. Could master have made a wrong judgment?" Actually, Suzimo was not entirely to blame. Everything that he had seen and experienced after entering the human emperor's palace was way beyond his imagination. There were things that he could not dare to believe even if he had guessed it. Furthermore, even now, he wasn't clear of the identity of the old man before him. Chapter 463, Inheritance. Chapter 463, Inheritance. The mysterious old man's statement revealed another important message. The human emperor was alive. He was an emperor of the ancient era after all. Through the endless years, countless emperors have already died. To think that the emperor who was lauded as the strongest and most domineering throughout history was still alive. Could it be that after endless cultivation and breakthroughs, living beings are truly able to extend their lifespans and age with the universe or even reach the realm of eternal indestructibility? Since the human emperor was still alive, what cultivation realm was he at right now? Senior human emperor. He's still on Tianhuang mainland. A moment later, Su Zimo composed himself before asking. Of course not. The mysterious old man waved it off. Master isn't here either. You don't have to dream about getting to meet him either. You're not qualified yet. Su Zimo was not ashamed upon hearing that, and merely took it in his stride and smiled. Right after, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he recalled that before she left, Dayu said with a chuckle that she was about to return to her world. Was that the same world as the human emperor? Since there had never been any signs of immortals found on Tianhuang mainland, did it mean that after attaining immortality, cultivators could pass through the void and travel to another world? Could that world be filled with countless immortals like Dayu and the human emperor? What sort of a vast and vibrant place was that? Instantly, countless thoughts filled Su Zimo's mind, and he developed a longing interest towards that foreign world. Before you, a total of 7 people entered the human emperor's palace, and each of them received a different inheritance. The inheritance you're about to receive is different from theirs. It can be considered as the true legacy of the human emperor. At that point, the mysterious old man looked deeply at Su Zimo before waving his sleeves gently, causing 2 objects to float in midair. It was a piece of paper and a gigantic seal. The paper was written with endless tiny words. Su Zimo merely swept his eyes across and felt them prickle slightly. The gigantic seal was squarish and golden throughout. On it, a divine dragon was etched, coiling around it in a lifelike manner. The gigantic golden seal hovered in midair, emanating waves of powerful might, as though it could crush the stars and suppress the entire world. The mysterious old man remarked, "This is the coiling dragon seal. It's a Incarnate spirit weapon. Keep it well." A Incarnate spirit weapon? Su Zimo was shocked. Prior to this, Su Zimo witnessed how terrifying Incarnate spirit weapons were in that battle beneath the human emperor's palace. The shimmering silver circlet that Hang Qiuyu brought out shattered his supreme-grade spirit weapon instantly. That was also the reason why Hang Qiuyu managed to survive with a sliver of health after receiving Su Zimo's punch. Furthermore, Foundation establishment cultivators were unable to unleash the full might of Incarnate spirit weapons. The terrifying burst power of Incarnate spirit weapons could only be released in the hands of golden cores. "Thank you, Senior." Su Zimo did not reject and took over the coiling dragon seal, injecting spirit energy into it. Whoosh! A bright light shone on the coiling dragon seal, and Su Zimo seemed like he was holding a blazing sun with an intimidating might. Suddenly, Su Zimo's expression changed, and he shuddered as his wrist sank. It was heavy. After it was injected with spirit energy, the coiling dragon seal almost caused Su Zimo to embarrass himself as it weighed down on him. Now that Su Zimo had attained greater mastery of the orifice clearing section, his physique had the strength to suppress all other 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators without even taking on his demon form. However, despite that, his body experienced pressure from the coiling dragon seal. The mysterious old man nodded to himself. He thought that Su Zimo would definitely embarrass himself since he was unprepared and would be squashed by the coiling dragon seal. The fact that the lad could remain standing without moving had exceeded his expectations. Clearing away his spirit energy, Su Zimo put the coiling dragon seal away in his storage bag. That was a great treasure. Delighted, Su Zimo's gaze shifted towards the page of sutra at the side expectantly. The mysterious old man pointed to the page and remarked indifferently, "This is a secret skill created by my master in the past. If you manage to master it, you can already fight against golden cores at Foundation Establishment Realm. In fact, you can even challenge golden core phenomenons." Pissed, Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. The difference between cultivation realms were divided into minor and major realms. For example, in Foundation Establishment, early stage, mid-stage, late stage, and perfected were minor realms, whereas it was a major realm between Foundation Establishment and Golden Core realm. There was an insurmountable gap between major realms. It symbolized one breaking free of the restrictions of the universe and extending their lifespans. The difference in strength was even worlds apart. But right now, the human emperor's secret skill could allow Su Zimo to challenge the strength of golden cores even at Foundation Establishment realm. The mysterious old man's final statement was even more shocking. In fact, you can even challenge golden core phenomenons. Every single cultivator knew that golden core phenomenons were the extremes of spirit arts, and there were extremely few people who could cultivate them. The reason why many Foundation Establishment Paragons wanted to enter the ancient battlefield so that they could progress in their Foundation Establishment realm was because they wanted to be able to cultivate the strongest golden core phenomenons when they form their cores. Without further description, the mysterious old man's simple statement had already revealed how terrifying that secret skill was. Sighing gently, the mysterious old man continued. The conditions required to cultivate this skill are extremely stringent, and after my master created it, nobody else managed to learn it. I hope that you'll be able to succeed. Even though he said that, it was clear that the mysterious old man did not bear much hope through his tone. Su Zimo received the page of sutra and focused his attention. There were 3 tiny golden words in the middle of the first row. Ancient Dragonification Manual. Those 3 simple words caused a terrifying pressure that was shuddering. For some reason, Su Zimo felt his body heating up. It was as though an inexplicable power was surging within him. The mysterious old man's voice sounded once more. Although you won't be able to transform into a divine dragon after attaining greater mastery of the Ancient Dragonification Manual, you'll be able to conjure the phantom of a divine dragon that possesses the true might of the dragons. Humans are weak and have ordinary bloodlines. They can't be compared against the dragons who are extremely powerful from birth. If you want to cultivate the Ancient Dragonification Manual, you will have to steal the blood chi of the dragon race. The elixir you consumed earlier was a blood-flesh elixir made from the flesh of a young dragon. Instantly, Su Zimo had a look of realization. That was the reason why he had a sense of familiarity towards the aura given off by the elixir. Su Zimo's eyes flickered, and he frowned in deep thought. According to the mysterious old man's words, one could only succeed in cultivating the Ancient Dragonification Manual after consuming the blood chi of the dragon race. He was in a rather unique situation. A couple of years ago, he had consumed half a dragon. Although it was not formed yet, that was the egg of a divine dragon after all. Hee. The mysterious old man chuckled coldly. Don't look down on the fact that it's a young dragon. You were able to receive such immense benefits just by consuming an elixir made from the flesh of a young dragon. If it was an adult divine dragon, the power of a single drop of its blood would be enough to destroy you, let alone its flesh. Su Zimo did not doubt that statement at all. Back then, after he and Night Spirit consumed that dragon egg, their bodies almost gorged to the point of explosion, and it took them a full 3 years to digest it completely. Chapter 464, 2 Utmost Treasures. Chapter 464, 2 Utmost Treasures. The conditions required to cultivate the Ancient Dragonification Manual are extremely stringent, and obtaining the blood chi of the dragon race is merely the beginning. Among the 7 people who entered the Human Emperor's palace before you, there were also some of them with potentials comparable to you. However, they were merely slightly inferior. The mysterious old man said with a trace of pity, "Tisk, that lay kid was rather decent as well. However, it was a pity that he couldn't unlock his 9th spirit meridian, causing him to miss this great opportunity to get the Ancient Dragonification Manual." At that point, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled Uncle Yang's words. Legend has it that the secret to the Extreme Foundation establishment is hidden within the Human Emperor's palace. He asked hurriedly, "Senior, may I ask, How does one unlock the ninth spirit meridian and cultivate to the point of extreme foundation establishment? Foundation establishment was an extremely important step in one's path of cultivation, and how stable their roots were would decide their future accomplishments. The mysterious old man replied, 9 represents the extreme, and if one wants to unlock their ninth spirit meridian, their spirit energy would have to be extremely pure without the slightest bit of impurity. I've checked through your spirit energy. It's very pure, and that's quite seldom. Pondering for a moment, Suzimo remarked, Senior, up to this point of my cultivation, I've rarely consumed any elixirs, and even for those that I consume, they were at perfect grade. I think it should have something to do with that. Apart from perfect grade elixirs, every other grade of elixir possessed impurities. Long-term consumption would result in consolidation of those impurities. Although they would not have a significant impact on a cultivator's combat strength, it would impede the possibility of them unlocking their ninth spirit meridian. Elixirs are only part of the equation. The mysterious old man shook his head. In Tianhuang mainland, there are many sects and factions with rich heritages and immense foundations. It's not rare for them to provide perfect-grade elixirs for the paragons in their sects with the most potentials. However, even while cultivating and absorbing spirit qi, there's no way to avoid the existence of impurities. While cultivating, Suzimo frowned slightly. The mysterious old man explained, mortals consume food which would turn into feces upon digestion, creating impure qi and filth. Therefore, at a certain point of cultivation, there's a saying of Anidia. Suzimo nodded. He had heard about Anidia before. It was said that after entering nascent soul realm and cultivating an essence spirit, cultivators could live without consuming food and merely take in dew and the essence of the universe to survive, soaring through the skies and riding the clouds. In fact, they could even scour the world and explore the 4 oceans and 8 desolates with a single thought. The mysterious old man continued, similar to mortal food, spirit qi would inevitably contain impurities upon absorption to one's dantian. That is, unless the person was in possession of an utmost treasure that could help them purify the spirit qi. At that point, he gave a meaningful look at Suzimo's right hand. Suddenly, Suzimo gave off a gradual look of realization as he recalled how qi entered his body while he was cultivating his qi condensation manual. Back then, spirit qi entered his body through his right hand. Before entering the human emperor's palace, the few sealers said that his right hand was a divine phoenix bone. If that was true, it would explain many things. Entering his right hand, spirit qi would be purified by the divine phoenix bone, incinerating all impurities and allowing him to only take in the purest spirit qi. Back then, he had just mastered qi condensation and was able to release a level 3 spirit fire with his right hand immediately. Now that he thought about it, that was not a true level 3 spirit fire. He merely managed to possess the might and heat of a level 3 spirit fire because of the divine phoenix bone. Of course, from the beginning till now, Suzimo had never released the true powers of the divine phoenix bone. At the battle beneath the human emperor's palace, the terror of the divine phoenix bone had only revealed itself for a brief moment after absorbing the golden core's true fire before returning to normal. The mysterious old man said with a hint of lament, this divine phoenix bone is one of the rare few utmost treasures in Tianhuang mainland. The person who changed your fate by attaching your wrist with this divine phoenix bone must have exerted a lot of effort. At this point, Suzimo was finally certain that his blood bone palm was the legendary divine phoenix bone. Previously, he was severely injured after killing the joyful sect cultivators in Songlang mountain range, and his right hand was battered. By the time he woke up, his right hand was already perfectly fine. In other words, during the few days he fainted, Daiyu had not only helped him to plant a spirit root, she had even reattached his wrist with the divine phoenix bone. If you are smart, you should have realized that you must not reveal that divine phoenix bone again after leaving this place. Otherwise, you are definitely bound to die. The mysterious old man said with a stern expression, even the mighty figures and patriarchs of the human race would be tempted to make a move for the divine phoenix bone. Zimo nodded. Thankfully, he changed his appearance and hid his identity beneath the human emperor's palace. Otherwise, he would definitely be hunted upon re-entering Tianhuang mainland. A man's talent would often arouse the greed of others. There is also an extremely strict requirement for one's spirit root if they want to reach the Extreme Foundation establishment realm. Regarding that, you have no issue as well? After a brief pause, the mysterious old man looked at Zimo deeply once more. There are only that few types of utmost treasures in Tianhuang mainland. Someone has really spared no expenses in trying to pave your path forward by leaving you with 2 of them. Ah? Zimo was shocked. Before Dayu left, she had left him 3 gifts. One of them was his spirit root, and now, he knew that the divine phoenix bone was another. There was still one more unknown gift. Through the mysterious old man's words, it seemed like the second utmost treasure had something to do with his spirit root. Zimo could not help but ask, "What's the second utmost treasure? Even if I explain it to you, it's no use for you because your cultivation realm isn't there yet. Perhaps one day in the future, you might be able to see it for yourself." The mysterious old man shook his head. Zimo did not press on, feeling slightly disappointed. The mysterious old man continued, "The ancient Dragonification manual expends a lot of one's spirit energy, and it can only be released with an Extreme Foundation establishment. Not only that, the ancient Dragonification manual requires a lot from the physique of a cultivator. Although you're only conjuring the phantom of a divine dragon, it still possesses the true might of a dragon. Extremely terrifying, it overrides over all living beings. An ordinary body wouldn't be able to withstand the might of the dragon, and even ancient remnant beasts would explode into a blood mist. Since you're someone who does immortality and demonic cultivation together, your physique is alarming and is enough to withstand the ancient Dragonification manual." Zimo was not surprised that the mysterious old man could read his background like a book. However, what surprised Zimo was the mysterious old man's attitude towards the matter. If the various major sects of Tianhuang mainland were to know that he was doing immortality and demonic cultivation at the same time, they would definitely regard him as a despicable outcast and kill him. However, the mysterious old man was indifferent towards the issue. Waving it off with his hand, the mysterious old man said, "There's less than half a year left. Stay here and cultivate for now. You don't have to force yourself even if you don't succeed." "All right." Zimo nodded and strode to the lakeside without hesitation, sitting down to glance through the page of sutra. Every single word on the sutra possessed a mysterious might. Even with Zimo's powerful eyes, he had to take a rest every now and then. He could only continue reading after closing his eyes for a short break. When he was thirsty, Zimo would drink from the lake. When he was hungry, he would catch a hongong fish for food. Other than that, the rest of his time was spent on cultivating the ancient Dragonification manual. Just like that, 5 months passed in the blink of an eye. This day, as it was close to the end of the year in the ancient battlefield, the mysterious old man appeared and was about to inform Zimo, who was at the lakeside. All of a sudden, a change happened to Zimo's aura. A terrifying might descended at the lakeside, shocking the masses. Chapter 465, True Dragon? Chapter 465, True Dragon? Sensing something, the mysterious old man looked towards Zimo. Beside the lake, Zimo assumed a lotus position with an upright back. His eyes were closed as his black hair swayed without any wind. A terrifying aura was coming forth from within his body, climbing rapidly. It was as though an ancient power was being awakened. An extremely long living being appeared in midair, coiling several rounds around Zimo upwards. Finally, it stopped in midair, and its gigantic head stared in the direction of the mysterious old man. Dragon race. Compared to adult dragons, which can be thousands of feet long, this could only be considered as a young dragon. Although it was only a phantom of a young dragon, the aura that it produced was shuddering, as if it could conquer all living beings. Gradually, Green scales appeared on the young dragon's body one after another, shimmering with a cold glint. The bone spikes on its back and its sharp claws were bared while its horns stood gloriously. The phantom of the green dragon was actually turning corporeal. Even the scales, bones, and claws were condensed with flesh, lifelike and no different from a true dragon. Pest! The mysterious old man gasped, and his expression changed. Disbelief filled his eyes as he exclaimed, "How is that possible?" The ancient Dragonification Manual was meant to conjure the phantom of a divine dragon by using the blood chi of the dragon race. The shape of a divine dragon could only be made out faintly. That alone was heavenly defying. However, Su Zimo had conjured an actual true dragon. Even the human emperor who created this secret skill was unable to reach this point. How did this Foundation establishment cultivator manage it? Could this young man have achieved a new comprehension of the ancient Dragonification Manual within a mere 6 months? All of a sudden, Su Zimo's eyes burst wide open with a lightning gaze. At the same time, the coiling dragon above him opened its eyes as well. Cold and mighty, it could not be ignored. The man and dragon opened their eyes at the same time. The moment the dragon opened its eyes, it was as though it had awakened and possessed actual life as it surveyed its surroundings with an overwhelming might. Given the mysterious old man's cultivation realm, he was composed and felt nothing much as the dragon's eyes swept past him. However, the incredible beasts in the surroundings sprawled onto the ground motionlessly. The fishes in the lake went silent, not daring to swim, and the birds in the skies fell one after another fearfully. Against the dragon's might, all the living beings felt a sense that came from the depths of their souls. The dragons were one of the strongest living beings back in the primordial era where the thousands of races reigned. It had once ruled over the world above all the thousands of races. Although Su Zimo was merely a Foundation establishment cultivator, with the protection of the dragon, he exuded a dominance that looked down on the world. It was peerless, as though he had control over all divine beings in the universe. Bang! Su Zimo swayed a little, and the dragon coiling around him dissipated before disappearing gradually. The immense pressure vanished. Once again, the incredible beasts went back to play, and everything returned to normalcy. Heaving a sigh of relief, the mysterious old man came before Su Zimo and said, "Since you forcibly released the ancient Dragonification Manual without your cultivation realm being high enough, you won't be able to sustain it for long. Once you're at Extreme Foundation Establishment, you'll be able to release the secret skill and use it against your foes." Su Zimo nodded. He had summoned that small dragon for a couple of seconds, but the spirit energy within his body was thoroughly expended and his spirit sea was almost dry. Right now, he was at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. The fact that he was still unable to release the ancient Dragonification Manual, given his immense spirit energy, was proof of how terrifying that secret skill was. The mysterious old man's gaze lingered around Su Zimo, sizing him continuously. It was only until Su Zimo's hairs stood on end that the mysterious old man asked, "How did you manage to conjure an actual true dragon?" Hesitating for a moment, Su Zimo shook his head. "I don't know either." He had a guess in his heart, but he wasn't certain. The fact that he was able to conjure a true dragon might have a lot to do with his consumption of half a dragon egg. The elixir that the mysterious old man fed him was merely a blood-flesh elixir made from the flesh of a dragon. However, he had devoured half of an actual dragon a couple of years ago. After entering his stomach, the essence and vitality of the dragon race filled every single part of his body. Cultivating the ancient Dragonification Manual caused that power within his body to awaken, causing yet another unaccounted change. Master truly has good judgment. The mysterious old man did not press on and merely lamented. A moment later, he said, "The year is almost up and the last that entered together with you has left first. It's about time for you to do so as well." Su Zimo was relieved when he heard that Demonischi was fine. Bowing deeply to the mysterious old man, he said, "Thank you for your life-saving grace and the guidance for the past half-year, Senior." He had truly benefited way too much this time round. He had attained greater mastery of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and was only a step away from forming an inner core. In terms of cultivation, he was already at the peak of 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. As long as he consumed the Meridian unlocking elixir and continued cultivating, he would have a chance of unlocking the 9th Spirit Meridian. He would be able to cultivate to the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment realm. At that point, even without taking on his demon form, he would be able to fight against golden cores with the might of the ancient Dragonification manual. The mysterious old man waved it off. You don't have to thank me. If you're truly able to reach my master's level one day, thank him personally face to face. Where do you want to descend? I can send you there. After pondering for a moment, Suzimo said, Shinyan City. Upon re-entering the ancient battlefield, Suzimo could clearly sense that the place seemed to have gotten more unstable. It meant that the year was almost up. Shintian City was a little empty and quiet without the bustle from before. Most of the cultivators have already left, and only a few remained. They traveled through the city with hurried expressions. It was clear that they were also preparing to leave. There was already no one at the territory of Elixir Yang sect. Suzimo went straight to Xiaoning's room and caught sight of her handwriting etched on a stone table after looking around. Brother, Elixir Yang sect is located in the middle continent of Tianhuang mainland. Because their teleportation spot is extremely far from Xintian City, I'll have to make a move with Sister Tangyu first. Once I cultivate the longevity elixir, I'll return to Yin country to look for Big Brother. Both Night Spirit and I are fine. Don't miss us. Regards, Xiaoning. The writing was scribbled a little hurriedly. It was obvious that Xiaoning truly had no time at the end and had to leave. Smiling to himself, Suzimo reached out and gave a simple swipe. Even though it was a casual move, an entire layer of the stone table surface was wiped off and the words disappeared completely. Before leaving Xintian City, Suzimo had already instructed Night Spirit to stay by Xiaoning's side and head to Elixir Yang sect with her. He had to return to the Great Zhou dynasty and was unable to stay by Xiaoning's side. As such, the only way he would feel relieved was if Night Spirit was with her. Now that he knew that Xiaoning was fine, Suzimo was at ease and did not linger further in the city. He headed straight for the cave abode that Ji Yaoxue and the rest were cultivating in. Previously, he promised her that he would return for her. Suddenly, Suzimo could not help but frown when he recalled a person. Junhao. Previously, he suspected that there was something wrong with that person, but he had no proof. Before leaving, he even reminded Ji Yaoxue to keep something up her sleeve to guard against that guy. I hope Yaoxue is fine. Suzimo's eyes flashed with a cold glint, and a massive pair of wings spread out behind him. Blood chi burst forth, and he sped forward at full speed. His speed was already at its limits. Chapter 466, Fallout. Chapter 466, Fallout. A steep mountain stood at the borders of the ancient battlefield. Halfway on the mountain, a man stood in front of the cave abode with his hands behind his back. He was handsome and had a noble aura, but his expression was grim and his eyes flashed with coldness occasionally. Azure Frost Sect's Junhao was the prince of the Great Xia dynasty. The reason why he courted Ji Yaoxue painstakingly previously was because he knew about her identity as the princess long ago. If the two of them could develop further, he could make use of the opportunity and her identity to understand the background of the Great Zhou dynasty fully. However, it was a pity that Ji Yaoxue maintained a neutral attitude towards him all these years, similar to how she would treat all the other senior and junior brothers in the sect. Although Junhao was a little frustrated, he was extremely scheming and was in no hurry. The path of cultivation was long, and there were many chances for them to interact since they were in the same sect. However, it was a pity that a monstrous cultivator appeared in the sect competition, giving him a sense of threat. When Ji Yaoxue wore that long pale yellow dress and circled around that man, smiling with a bedazzling wink, that scene stabbed Junhao's heart like a thorn. Suzimo. He gripped his fists slowly and narrowed his gaze. Ji Yaoxue's attitude towards that man was clearly different from others. Even the way she looked at him was enough to make Junhao jealous. After entering the ancient battlefield, his plans were further destroyed when Su Zimo unleashed terrifying methods and suppressed all enemies domineeringly. Almost all the great Xia cultivators that entered the ancient battlefield were killed. The scariest thing was that Su Zimo had already begun suspecting him. In that period of time, Junhao lived his days on thin ice, hiding carefully, afraid to let out a single mistake. During normal times, that man looked like a scholar with a friendly appearance and calm gaze. However, Junhao knew in his heart that this was a man who was decisive to kill. As long as he revealed a single mistake, that man would definitely kill him without giving him a chance to explain. Finally, that day, Su Zimo left. It was only then that Junhao heaved a sigh of relief and felt relaxed. However, it did not take long for him to be frustrated once more. In fact, he was even seething with hatred. There were 5 stone chambers in the cave abode. Before leaving, Su Zimo had actually set up a formation outside the 5th stone chamber. Ever since that day, Ji Yaoxue had not stepped out from that stone chamber at all. No matter how Junhao tried to invite her, she would always have excuses to push him away. At the same time, she did not allow anyone in, including the remaining 2 guards of the Great Zhou dynasty. Yaoxue, have you started suspecting me as well? Junhao's gaze flickered. Slowly his expression turned cold as he murmured, "Since that's the case, don't blame me for falling out with you." He withdrew a spirit crane from his storage bag and wrote a few words on it. After injecting spirit energy to it, it spread its wings and flew, disappearing into the void instantly. Turning around, Junhao entered the cave abode and walked towards the 5th stone chamber. He did not walk far when Si Yutong of Iridescent Cloud's palace approached him. The latter greeted with a smile. "Brother Junhao, the year is almost up. When are we leaving?" After consuming the Meridian Unlocking Elixir, Si Yutong cultivated to 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Junhao is at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment right now. With a fake smile, Junhao replied, "I'm about to look for junior sister Yaoxue to discuss this. Come along." "All right." Si Yutong agreed readily without suspicion. After passing the long tunnel, they arrived before the 5th stone chamber where the remaining 2 guards of the Great Zhou dynasty stood on each side. Both of them were also at the peak of 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. Most of the cultivators at the center of the ancient battlefield were at 7 Meridian Foundation Establishment, and the Paragons of Super Sects were even at 8 Meridian Foundation Establishment. However, in reality, most of the cultivators in the ancient battlefield were only at 6 Meridian Foundation Establishment. "Greetings, fellow Taoists." The 2 guards greeted with cupped fists. Since there were only 5 of them here, all of them were long familiar with one another. Junhao's gaze was fixated on the stone door as he said loudly with a smile, "Junior sister Yaoxue, the year is almost up. Let's move today and return to the teleportation spot." A moment later, an unhurried voice sounded from within the stone chamber. "Senior brother Jun, there's no need to hurry. Zimo promised me that he will return. There's no difference waiting for a couple more days." Junhao's expression froze when he heard that. Lowering his head slightly, his gaze was ghastly and his face was frighteningly dark. "Wait for him?" Si Yutong sneered. That person didn't know what's good for him and ventured deep into the ancient battlefield. Since there's been no news of him for so long, he's definitely dead. Ji Yaoxue replied indifferently, "I believe that he won't die and will definitely return." "Fu!" Si Yutong stifled a chuckle and shook his head. He was absolutely sure that Su Zimo was dead after venturing into the depths of the ancient battlefield. Junhao took a deep breath of air. By the time he looked up, he had a smile once more. "Junior sister, there's only 10 odd days left. If that man wanted to return, he would have done so long ago. We only need 2 days to reach the teleportation spot from here. We can still make it even if we move a couple of days later," Ji Yaoxue replied firmly. "Brother Junhao, since she won't leave, let's leave." Si Yutong sneered once more. "We can definitely return to the teleportation spot safely given our current cultivation realms." The smile on Junhao's face had vanished as he said slowly with a cold expression, Yao Xue, I've already given you your last chance. Since you didn't cherish it, don't blame me for not showing mercy on account of us being in the same sect. The moment he said that, the atmosphere turned strange. The two guards frowned and looked at Junhao in confusion. Si Yutong was stumped as well. Things were fine earlier on. Why did he suddenly have a change in attitude? What did it mean by last chance and not showing mercy? With a cold gaze, Junhao glared at the stone door, as though he could see the woman inside, and said word by word, Yao Xue, you'll be leaving today whether you want to or not. The choice isn't yours. Junhao, what do you mean by that? Sensing Junhao's hostility, one of the guards hollered warily. Inside the stone chamber, Yao Xue sighed. You still couldn't hide it after all. Since you've already begun to suspect me, there's no need for me to pretend any longer. Junhao admitted readily. I was initially skeptical when Zimo reminded me at the start. Yao Xue shook her head. However, you've been too anxious for the past half a year, trying to find excuses to either enter or to get me out. At that time, I knew that Zimo's guess was right. Indeed, he was the one who spoiled my plans. Junhao cursed and pointed at the stone chamber, sneering, Yao Xue, do you think that a few layers of formations laid down by a dead man would be able to protect you? Zimo mentioned that even an 8-meridian foundation establishment cultivator would have to take a few days to dispel this formation. Yao Xue replied, however, it's a pity that you're at 7-meridian foundation establishment. Given your strength, there's no way you'll be able to dispel this formation. Junhao, give it up. Even if it's something that Zimo left behind, you won't be able to deal with it either. Junhao was furious upon hearing Yao Xue's words and lost control of his emotions. He snarled as an ugly expression showed on his face and green veins popped from his neck. Yao Xue, once I break through this stone chamber, I'll let you enjoy for a long time beneath my crotch. A series of dull, heavy footsteps sounded, approaching from afar in the tunnel. Bang, bang, bang. The entire cave abode was shaking as dust fell endlessly. Instantly, an aura of death gushed over with a suffocating stench. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.